All right, welcome to the January 14th, 2021 Planning Commission. And our first item on the agenda would be some housekeeping rules. If we can have Terrace here to. Okay, all right, okay. All right, we'll get to that in just a moment. The first item would be the invocation. So if you all bow your heads. Heavenly Father, please bless us as we meet tonight. Please keep us free from injury, hurt, or harm, and help us get through this devastating pandemic. As COVID's rates soar in Rockdale County and across the nation, please help us with the effort to vaccinate all of us so that we may once again return to normal life that we had before the virus. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, if you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic on which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a quorum tonight, and I'll do the roll call. If you're present, please say aye. Tom?
Here, aye.
Are they muted? Because I know Tom is on.
Did you hear me? Did you hear me, Steve?
Okay, yeah, okay. Tom's here, okay. Karen? Karen's not with us, but she may be joining us later. Ronnie?
Here.
Rel? Okay. Medessar?
Yes, sir.
Med? Okay. Ernestine?
Here, aye.
Okay. And Tawana?
Here.
Tawana's here, okay. All right, so we have a quorum, okay. The next item would be the approval of the agenda. I've been asked if we can make a couple of changes here, kind of expedite things. And so I request by the city of Conyers to hear the presentations for items C1, C2, and C3 in one presentation. And we'll talk about each item and vote on each item and have anyone speak during each of the items, but the city will do their presentation for all three of them at the same time. The other one change would be, it's requested by the county to move items R4 and R5 text amendments to the end of the meeting. So with those changes noted, I'd like to take a vote on the approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we make the changes to the agenda as spoken.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Ronnie. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. All right. Next, motion passes. Next item on the agenda would be approval of the minutes of the December 10th meeting.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of the December 10th meeting.
Second.
Motion to approve. Second.
Second.
Okay. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 All right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda would be the rules and procedures for the public hearings. Do we have that available? Okay. Oh, let the record show that Karen Benton is now here. Welcome.
Yeah.
This meeting is being streamed live on Facebook and being recorded. Due to audio sensitivity, please refrain from sidebar conversations or personal comments for anyone in attendance. There is a 15-second delay between the live meeting and the Facebook stream. All virtual participants' microphones will be automatically muted by the meeting facilitator. For those in attendance here in the auditorium, please do not stream Zoom or Facebook due to negative impacts on the audio. Comments submitted via Facebook will become an official part of the record. Please limit the comments to the case being heard. If you are joining us in person, each speaker must sign their name to the appropriate zoning case sheet and fill out a public comment card and submit it to county staff to
Okay. Do we have more for that or? Okay.
If you are joining us in person, each speaker must sign their name to the appropriate zoning case sheet and fill out a public comment card to register your intent to speak prior to the start of this meeting. If you are joining us virtually, you should have registered your intent to speak with staff prior to the start of this meeting. Each item of business will be handled in the order that it appears on the agenda, unless upon motion of the Planning Commission, the order is changed. A member of the city or county planning staff will present each item to the Planning Commission and will further provide a recommendation upon each item of business. The zoning applicant or the agent will state their name and address and will have 10 minutes in which to make his or her presentation. Any portion of their 10 minutes may be reserved for rebuttal following the opposition to the application. After the applicant's presentation, all registered speakers who wish to speak in favor of the application will then be heard. The secretary will call all speakers by name in the order of persons attending live in the auditorium, then persons attending via the virtual meeting. Prior to speaking upon the item, each speaker will state their name and address. They will also be limited to a total of 10 minutes. Once the applicant has made his or her presentation and the speakers in favor of the application have been heard, the secretary will call upon the registered speakers in opposition to the application. The speakers will be called by name in the order of persons attending live in the auditorium, then persons attending via the virtual meeting. The opposition will likewise be limited to a total of 10 minutes. Once the public hearing portion is closed, no other speakers will be heard. After all public comments have been heard, the Planning Commission may hold a general discussion. The Planning Commission will then vote and forward the recommendation onto the City of Conyers City Council or the Rockdale County Board of Commissioners public hearing.
Thank you. Now on to new business in City of Conyers. As noted earlier, we're going to hear the presentation for C1, C2, and C3, but we'll hear vote on each item separately. So the first one is item C1, case 01-2021, ordinance 1232, request to amend the official zoning map from RS14 MX VOD Tier 2 to Gateway Village, Urban Village. 8.95 acres, applicant JBW Investment, agent Eric Johnson, Universal Planning and Development. Item C2, case 02-2021, ordinance 1233, request to amend official zoning map from RS14 MX VOD Tier 2, Gateway Village, Urban Village, 2146 Millers Chapel Road. Item C3, case 0-2021, ordinance 1234, request to amend official zoning map from RS14 MXVOD Tier 2, the Gateway Village Urban Village, 0.6 acres, owner CDV Limited Partnership, applicant JBW Investment, agent Eric Johansson, Universal Planning and Development. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said a mouthful, and I hope everyone had a great holiday and stayed safe.
Thank you. You
You
too.
too.
As you stated, this is one presentation for 3 items. There are 3 separate pieces of property, same request by the same applicant and same property owners for all 3 properties. So I appreciate the Planning Commission allowing us to consolidate our presentation, and then we'll hold the 3 separate public hearings. As you stated, this is a request for a rezoning of residential single-family 14, RS14, in the Tier 2 of the Mixed-Use Village Overlay District to the Gateway Village Urban Village sub-area. As you see there, this is for parcel CO 46001-009D, parcel 046001009C, and 04600100052. Now, you all may be saying, what do these numbers mean? Where are they at? Well, I'm happy to show you. So on your map there, the larger parcel there is 046001009D. It's 8.95 acres. It is situated behind the Aldi Food, has road frontage on 20 South and on Miller Chapel Road, just north of Public Shopping Center and across the street from Harbor Freight, which was the former Public Shopping Center. The property here is predominantly wooded. It does have some state waters that it is impacted by. And the zoning to the north is Gateway Village. So the request is consistent with the zoning in the area. Just for brevity, the standards for governing exercise of zoning power, I'll go through those real briefly. A, whether a proposed request will permit a use that is suitable in view of the use and development of adjacent and nearby properties. Yes, this request will permit a use that is suitable on those adjacent properties and nearby properties. Whether a proposed request will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby properties. No, staff does not believe the request will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby properties. C, whether the property to be affected by the proposed request has a reasonable economic use as currently zoned. Well, there are some permitted and special uses identified in the table of permitted uses for the RS14 Tier 2 MXVOD. I didn't do it. However, given the pattern of development, there is possibly greater economic use if zoned Gateway Village Urban Village. And while not all uses in the Gateway Village Urban Village may be best suited at this location, there are many options available to provide an economic use. D, whether the proposed request will result in a use that will or could cause an excessive or burdensome use of the existing streets, transportation facilities, utilities, or schools. It is possible that any use allowed in the Gateway Village Urban Village could be burdensome to the existing streets, utilities, or schools, but so could many of the uses allowed under the current zoning. As you see here, the property is a vegetated state, undeveloped, so any pattern of development that goes here or the subsequent parcels could have a potential impact. Whether the proposed request is in conformity with the policy intent of the comprehensive plan, yes, the zoning request is in conformity with the policies and intent of the comprehensive plan. The future land use designation for this property and the other 2 properties, and I'll show those as well right here. That's the second one. And that little bitty triangle is the third one. Is Special Mixed Use Activity Center. Well, the Special Mixed Use Activity Center has a corresponding zoning of Gateway Village, so it is compatible. F, whether there are existing or changing conditions affecting the use and development of the property that give supporting grounds for either approval or disapproval of the request. Well, outside of the rapidly changing economic conditions, staff is unaware of any existing or changing conditions affecting the use and development of the property or the nearby properties for that matter. G, whether and the extent to which the proposal would result in significant adverse impacts to the natural environment. Well, the proposed zoning designation should have no adverse impacts on the natural environment. And depending upon how the property is developed, there are potential impacts to the natural environment. However, that can occur under the current zoning. And then H, any other matters that may be deemed appropriate by the department, the planning commission, or city council in review and consideration of this request. Staff has none. So just as an oversight, that is the zoning district, RS 14. It's in the mixed use village overlay district, tier 2. The red you see there is the public shopping center. It is BG. And the blue above is Gateway Village. The request is consistent, as previously stated, with the existing zoning in the immediate area, and it'd be a continuation of the Gateway Village district, if approved. Now, the purpose of the mixed-use Gateway Village district is to respond to the growing market demands for mixed-use development that creates an integrated and complementary combination of commercial, office, and residential uses. Additionally, the purpose of this district is to promote pedestrian-oriented development and redevelopment through increased accessibility between commercial corridors and adjacent residential neighborhoods, as well as to establish consistent architectural and design standards that enhance the aesthetics of the district. When considering a change in zoning, it is imperative that we keep in mind all permitted and special uses for the requested district, as not all uses may be compatible with the surrounding area and could have unintended consequences. The applicant has stated it is their intent is to combine these 3 properties into one property boundary and develop it as a mixed-use development with a 1.2 acre commercial component along Highway 20 and the remaining 10.5 acres as townhomes. The applicant has provided a concept plan of what the development could potentially look like, and there it is. This concept plan was prepared prior to a recent amendment to the Gateway Village zoning ordinance, and that any development would be required to meet the minimum standards of that district should the request be approved. While the final plan for development could change, the concept plan in general would provide a positive infill development in the form of housing in the middle of a retail corridor. This would be an appropriate use of the properties involved. Now, the applicant has requested a variance to be granted with the rezoning request. That request is to allow minimum townhouse unit width to be 22 feet wide instead of the required minimum 25 feet wide. Now, there are standards for granting a variance identified in our zoning ordinance. They state a variance shall not be granted unless each case there are specific findings of facts based directly upon the particular evidence supporting written conclusions that the variance A arises from conditions that is unique and peculiar to the land, structures, and building involved. B is necessary because the particular physical surroundings, the size, shape, topography of the specific property involved would result in unnecessary hardship for the owner, leasee, or occupant as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the provisions of the same zoning district as the subject property. C, the conditions requiring the requested relief is not ordinarily found in properties of the same zoning district as the subject property. And D, the condition is created by the regulations of this chapter and not by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant. E, granting of the variance will not impair or injure the other property improvements in the neighborhood or in which the subject property is located, nor impair an adequate supply of light or air to adjacent properties, substantially increase the congestion in public streets, increase the danger of fire, create hazard in air navigation, endanger the public safety, or substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. F, the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land, buildings, or structure. And G, the variance desired will not be opposed in the general spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance or comprehensive plan. Now, some of you may recall when we brought the text amendment last month for the 25-foot wide townhouse unit. The purpose of that is what we've learned from those developments that have been built in the area recently that have a 20 to 22-foot wide townhome unit is oftentimes the residents and their guests park along the street or on a grass shoulder or with their vehicle in the driveway, but hanging out into the travel lane. This is not only unsightly, but creates a public safety hazard when public safety has to respond to calls. So when we looked at that ordinance, we looked at how can we increase the safety aspect and reduce an unsightly appearance of oftentimes going through some of these developments and seeing cars overfilling. They got more cars than they do space to park them oftentimes. And we worked on that ordinance and we came up with what we thought would be a pretty good ordinance. And that's what we brought to you guys into the city council. The council did follow suit and did approve that. So what we came up with is the 25-foot wide unit, and that would allow for 2 cars to park side by side in the garage, and your driveway width wide enough where 2 cars can park side by side as well. Now, the 2-car garage, a standard 2-car garage, measures roughly 20 feet wide by 23 foot deep of interior space. And a 25-foot wide townhouse unit with a 20-foot wide garage will permit 2 cars to park side by side, and again, the 2 cars on the driveway, thus reducing that public safety hazard. For townhouse units with the garage entry at the front of the unit, a 25-foot in width unit will allow the garage entry and a porch or stoop at the front door. For townhouse units with the rear garage entry, the 25-foot wide unit will allow for the front door to be accessed via a porch or stoop and easily accommodate living space in the front of the unit, such as a bedroom, dining room, kitchen, living room, office. Very similar to a single-family detached structure that we often see. If there's any questions of me, I'll be happy to answer them at this time. I would like to go ahead and provide the staff recommendation for all 3 if the planning commission would allow.
Yes.
Okay, with no questions, staff recommends approval of the request to rezone the subject property from RS14 MXVOD Tier 2 to Gateway Village Urban Village, as the request is consistent with the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, and the Gateway Village Urban Village District will permit uses that are compatible with the surrounding built environment. Staff recommends denying the request for the variance to allow reduction in width of the townhouse units from 25 feet to 22 feet, as we found that there is no evidence that 1, the request arises from conditions that is unique and peculiar to the land, structures, and building involved. 2, is necessary because the particular physical surroundings, the size, shape, or topography of the specific property involved would result in unnecessary hardship. Financial implications is not a hardship standard that can be considered when deliberating a variance request. And 3, the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of land and buildings or structures. Well, there are 119 uses allowed by right in the Gateway Village Urban Village District. Now, many of which may or may not be possible on this piece of property given the location, but there are options for reasonable use. Again, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at this time. And this is the same staff recommendation for all 3 cases. I will remind you that we do need to have a public hearing for all 3 cases, and we'll close the public hearing and then close the public hearing for an individual case and have a deliberation and motion, then open the public hearing for the next one, and so on and so forth. The applicant is here and has a presentation he'd like to give. So if there's no questions for me, I'll call on the applicant.
Questions?
None.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. We'll now hear from the applicant.
You want the concept plan?
Yeah.
Okay. How's it?
Can I take my mask off to talk? Sure. Thanks. Eric Johansson, Universal Planning and Development, 6083 Shadburn Ferry Road, Buford, Georgia. We are here tonight as contract purchasers of this land, and I hope to see a nice townhome development and what works as a mixed-use development in the newly revised Gateway Village district on this property. We've spent a lot of time on this, and we've met with staff on several occasions, and this site plan was put together prior to the ordinance being approved by you guys in December, because I think we had an early December or late November filing date. We do have some constraints on the site that we're working around. The Valvoline is an existing use on the property. We didn't create it. It was sold by the property owner to Valvoline, and they created an interparcel access road that comes off Highway 20. They also have a detention pond, which is that long, narrow one on the top but that's not what the shape of it looks like now. It actually goes up into the roadbed above it, and some of the grading goes into those townhouse units that come up. Our proposal is to reshape that detention pond, leaving the infrastructure in place, but just reshape it around the roads. The other conflict that we have on the site is we have an existing farm pond on Alvin Vaughn's property that he's maintained for a long time. And it may or may not be a spring fed pond. We're still working through that and working through staff on there. And we have the presence of a stream buffer on site that was reduced on the dark green area as part of the Valvoline piece. And then it extends up to where the Regions Bank, Family Dollar, and Lowe's. There's 2 collection points of off-site stormwater that all comes to there, and there's known easements on the site that are established there as well. And we've walked that site with the city, and there's some pretty big drainage structures that are dumping water onto that site. So the constraints that we have on the site is we're working around the existing conditions of a detention pond that we didn't create, but we have to keep because there's a reciprocal easement agreement on site that we've got to maintain it. We've got stormwater coming onto us from others that was created years ago, and we've got to deal with it because we can't simply put a cork in it and plug it up and make the stormwater back up on their site. And we've got a farm pond and a proposed detention pond that we're going to try to reshape and put that together. Coupled with the fact that when we submitted this, I don't think that townhouses were a desirable use within the city, or at least the way that we wanted to do it. So we worked hard on this plan to come up with solutions that address the stormwater problems coming in from the top, working around the existing detention pond, and coming up with a site plan that we believe is both marketable and works on the site, that addresses it with predominantly rear entry units, which we've heard is the desirable units to have, with the only front entry units being those few that are right there on Miller's Chapel Road, backing up to Miller's Chapel. And we left a considerable landscape strip in there to buffer those from the road. We are adjacent to all the commercial stuff that you saw over there in the public shopping center. So we see as what's there now as an asset to the residents that are going to live there, and promotes the walkability, the connectivity on both road fronts and sidewalks to get there. We do disagree with staff on, the only thing we disagree with staff on is the townhouse width. The 25 feet that they came up with, and I understand how Scott came up with that and what they did. It's just not a standard width of a townhouse. People, the national home builders that build townhouses that are 20 feet wide, 22 feet wide, 24 feet wide, or 26 feet wide. We're proposing rear entry townhouses at 22 feet wide, and front entry townhouses that I believe they might be at 22, but we can change them to 24. That would be 24 feet wide. And with that, you have a 2-car garage, and the 22 foot going in, you have the brick returns on the side, and you have no door in the back. So there's no need for a door because you open your garage door and you go in. On the front, you have no garages to contend with because you're only looking at the front facades facing your internal streets. We've also designed this with 24 foot wide streets internal to the site, not narrower alleyways. So everything stays at a passerby width, and you're not playing chicken with other cars going down your alleyway. And we've also designed it for all the units that face inward to a parallel parking spaces and a green space in front of them. So there's parallel parking throughout the entire site in the front that both works for the residents parking and the guest parking. There's 2 parking spaces in the driveways. The driveways are all 24 to 26 feet in depth. So you won't have a situation of cars overhanging into the public roads. And anywhere that a car could overhang, they're overhanging into an alleyway, which is not where their friends and their residents go, because we've provided parallel parking spaces out front. In addition to the sidewalk out front, the parallel parking spaces, those units sit about 15 to 16 feet back from the sidewalk to provide the opportunity for a builder, if he wants to do a half sunk basement with a step down front, or if he wants to do a slab on grade, it provides that opportunity, as well as ample green space in the front of the units to provide landscaping. So our issues with this is that we do not believe we're going to have many, if any, buyers if we're required to have a 25 foot wide product. My solution, or my proposal to the city to consider, is that I think the ordinance was kind of crafted around what we proposed. And if our rear entry units could be at 22 feet wide and our front entry units could be at 24 feet wide, that takes into the consideration of the parking concerns the city had. We also agree to a condition that our driveways are at least 24 feet long and all of our streets are 24 feet wide. So when you have the width of the street, you have the length of the driveway, you have the ability to put 2 cars in a driveway, 2 cars in a garage, and you have parallel parking spaces throughout the site. The concerns that the city stated of cars overhanging the streets and causing traffic jams in the middle of the streets should be a non-concern. The other thing is these are all private driveways. It's not public streets. It's all private streets. So on private streets, there's no traffic concerns for the public coming through the site. We don't want the public coming through the site. We only want the residents that live there coming through the site. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. We agree with all the conditions that staff had talked about. We agree with the revised Gateway Village overlay, with the only reservation we have on the unit width. Thank you.
What's your intended market?
Our intended market,
Yes,
meaning,
people you're intended to market to.
Age group.
Age groups,
Oh.
types of people.
it's
marketing
it's
for-
not an age restricted property. We think from the national home builders we've talked to, we think these units will sell somewhere between 250 and 280. So I don't know what that equates to if you put that back into a local community where it feels, but I would assume that's, you know, a younger family that may have a child, and it's also people that empty nesters that their children have left, and it might be young professionals working in the area that are looking for alternative places to live without a single family house and yards to keep up. So I think we would attract anybody that's looking in this area to live.
Are there any masters on the main?
I mean, we're not at that point yet. We're not going to be the builder. We're going to develop the lots, and we're going to sell them to a builder. So the intended builder, whoever that builder is, would have the final floor plans that they'd like to go with.
Go back to the street parking. It's not necessarily the aesthetics of the parking. It's not. It's mostly public safety. The EMS, the police. They don't want the streets to be clogged up, so they want to make sure the streets are not clogged up with cars.
Right.
That's a lot of the consideration as well.
My neighborhood, we've got the wider streets, and I've got neighbors that, in Gwinnett County, I think the rule is you can park on the public road no more than 24 hours, but we have people that violate that all the time. We call the police and they tell us there's nothing they can do about it. With these being private drives and private streets within there, they're bound by the HOA regulations. So that would quickly get resolved with fines from the HOA to the intended residents that live there. There's not going to be room for people to park on the streets other than in the parallel parking spaces that are there. And every unit also has a 2-car garage with a driveway that you can have the ability to put 2 cars in as well.
I have a question regarding the farm pond. Has there ever been an issue from what y'all have seen in your planning regarding regarding the possible connection between the ponds that you're designing versus the farm pond? How far apart are they? And is there any chance that it could be an issue?
No, I don't think it'll be an issue. Our intention at this point in talking to our engineer is to combine the farm pond with our detention pond and have a retention pond versus a detention pond. We've also found
Just the fact that you were going to connect them.
correct. And we've also found in the language with the Publix pond that was sold as well from the Vaughns to the Publix. In their easement agreement, it does provide the ability to join our property with their property. So there is some additional land in there that we could connect together rather than having a dam separate the two, that we could connect all that and make it into a water feature. Theirs is a retention pond as well. There's fish in there, and routinely people jump the fence to go in there and go fish. So, I mean, our intention behind the farm pond or detention pond, retention pond, and the existing Publix pond is to make them an amenity of the site, not a deterrent.
I know, small, quick question. It's hard to tell on the map, but what is that square area between the Valvoline and the Seven Gables restaurant?
It's a commercial out parcel. It's a 1.2 acre commercial out parcel. So the Valvoline, when they went in, they took the frontage of their side of the road and created the track they needed, whittled it down to the length and width, and then they created that road that connects to 20. And there's also a median cut there that allows, I believe, a right a left end that we can't get out with full access. And that was all done at the DOT level when that driveway was approved. They borrowed dirt off of that site for the development of the Valvoline piece. They have a wall on the side of the Valvoline that holds them up from the public's detention pond, and the dirt that was legally taken off that site and put over there is why that site's halfway graded now. So we believe the highest and best use of that site is, we're showing a 7,000 square foot box. Yesterday, we had one of our brokers came to us with a very desirable restaurant that you guys would like, that wants to go there as well. If they went in there, that site would grow to about 2 acres. So I would end up losing about 10 townhouses in the back to be able to put those in and make it work. That's what we find is really cool about this Gateway Village zoning. It's not specific to any plan. It just allows the 119 uses that Scott was talking about. And the way, if we're going to mix townhouses in with commercial, it gives us some options on how to do that.
Thank you.
I would like to ask a question if you've evaluated it yet. Can you confirm the variance between how many units with the 25 feet compared to using 22 feet? You just said it's 119 units, so you're still going to have 119 units even if you go with the 25 feet as recommended?
No, we don't have 119 units. I was joking around. I think Scott said there's 119 uses within the Gateway Village that you can have. We've got 75 units on there. So I have not done a takeoff on what 25 versus 22 equates to.
Okay.
Frankly, we're not interested in 25-foot units because there's not a market for them at this price point.
Okay.
I've got a question about that. Is it the construction materials that's causing the problem with the 25 feet?
No, it's the market. There's not a lot of competition of townhouses here. It's a very desirable area to be. And it's easy to sit here. We've got a project over in Lawrenceville, and I took my landscape architecture liberty to design the plan. We got it approved for 66 units, and we went in there and we tightened everything up, and we said it's going to look like this. And I showed them some pictures of what Lennar does. It has a step up front brick entry. These are going to sell $350,000 type townhouses. And the builder that we're under contract with is buying it. He doesn't have in his arsenal of footprints a step up product. He has a slab on grade. So now we have to bob and weave to make the architecture comply with what we showed for Lennar, but yet we have to make his footprint work because he's the actual buyer that's going to go there and make the deal work and sell what the city wants. So there's not a magic science to any of that. You know, flexibility is the key when you're selling townhouse lots, to be able to work with the buyers and their width of unit. They all have different architecture, but they all have standard widths.
You're saying you have to custom build a house.
Correct.
That's why I was asking about. I didn't understand why the 25 foot was a problem. And I didn't know if it was related to the size of materials.
No, it's for the price point of the house. It's just not a width that the call it the nationals that definitely want to be in Conyers that would go here. It's not a width that they're going to put on there. There is not a 25 foot. They have a 24 and they have a 26. And we don't want 26 and they don't want 26 because the 26 equates to a different footprint, a different layout, a different sale price point, and it's just a different unit. The 2-car garage rear entry townhouses at 22 feet wide, they're 50 feet deep, are all over Atlanta, and that's what's selling. And when you have a front entry, it's a 24-foot 2-car garage where you have a nice decorated front porch on the front, and you have carriage style garages in the front with decorative lights.
They have a math worked out to do a certain thing for a certain thing. They got the
Correct.
builders to do this, that, and the other.
Well, City of Conyers be
Scott, could y'all work that out?
open to 24 foot?
Could you work a foot here or there? Could you come down a foot?
Well, the ordinance that is passed is written is at 25. If this body sees fit to make that recommendation to allow the flexibility that the applicant is seeking, you most certainly could do so.
Thank you.
You most certainly could do so. Again, we looked at the width requirement, and that's what put us at that 25 foot, enough to give the garage, and then you have a structural wall between the garage and the front entry for a 3 foot wide door. So that 25-foot wide would get us there. So again, I'm advocating on behalf of the ordinance because that's what the ordinance of the city council adopted. But if that's something for this case, this request that you guys want to make a recommendation to vary, then that's completely up to in your ball field, not mine.
Well,
I have a
no
question.
question. Would you be happier with 26 feet?
It is not about how happy I am. But thank you for asking.
Oh, yeah.
But Scott, over here, I think the question is what he said. The way they have designed, it's either 22, 24, or 26.
Yeah.
So, if city is going with 25, we will go through this problem every time when we discuss about it.
Well,
So really, that's what the issue, what I see, it's not about, what you like. It's
Well-
about that if we have 24 feet or 26 feet, then, that issue will not arise.
so the width, builders have a repertoire of homes that they build, and they know down to the nearest dollar what it costs to build each unit. Some builders build that 22-foot wide unit because they can build 3 for the same price that they can build 2 26-foot units, I'm guessing.
Not to interrupt,
So-
Scott, but I guess my question is this. Your concern, or the city's concern is, we don't want too many cars in a smaller space. They don't want to try to maneuver around in an odd number of math. So they can go the even number lower or the even number higher. Could we go the even number higher and it be good? And would the builder be?
So,
okay
so
with that?
the 26-foot, again, the ordinance says a minimum of 25. That's what I have to go by because that's what the ordinance is.
Mhm.
If this body wants to make a recommendation that all have to be 24, then you can do so.
Mhm.
Again,
24 might be a good compromise.
so the applicant has talked with builders that build the 20 to 22 to 24 and 26. And yeah, if there's builders out there, I'm sure that build the 25. I was able to go on Google and find 25-foot wide townhouse house plans. Those house plans may not be the plans that the builders that Mr. Johansson is talking with, but they're out there. And it all does come down to economics and what works for the area, because the builder has to be able to sell the product at the price point in order for them to make a profit. Obviously, a 22-foot wide unit is cheaper to build than a 25-foot wide unit. So you have to adjust your price points accordingly. The price point of units is not something that planning and zoning involves themselves with.
Right.
We're looking at the best interest for the community and make the recommendation for what we believe, based upon sound, reasonable evidence, is good for the community. So that's why we made that recommendation for 25-foot wide unit. But again, each case is different. If this body wants to make a recommendation to vary that, then that is within your authority to do so. And the city council can follow suit, or they can take our recommendation, or they can do a number of different things.
Well,
May I
builders
ask a
typically.
question? May I ask a question?
Go ahead, Mr.
Yes.
Do they have a builder in mind already? Are they
No,
working?
ma'am. No, ma'am. I
said
believe,
no.
in my working experience with Mr. Johansson and his group, they work with several different builders. Before I believe they get too far in the development stage of this, they'll have several serious talks with different builders that they work with frequently and get one under contract. But I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm going to confirm that with Mr. Johansson if you'd like to.
Now, what Scott is saying is true. We do not have a builder under contract at this point because we don't have the zoning on the property. So it's hard to have a contract with somebody to sell them something that we don't have. So we have to get the zoning first. Our intention is to get the development permit so that we have a developed permit in hand that a builder can then move on with. I don't have a problem with the 25 foot as a whole on the Gateway Village overlay district or whatever the district's called. But applied to this piece of property, what's the max density in that? You can't even get to 10 units an acre unless you have 20-foot wide units. At our products right now at 22-foot wide, I don't even think our density is over 8 units. But typically a density in most townhome ordinances is maximum density of 8 units per acre. If this is 10, we're not at 10. I've laid out thousands of townhouses and I can't even get to 10 units an acre unless we go vertical around a parking deck. You do all 20-foot units on the site on a perfect rectangle site where you get to create your own property lines. This site does have challenges, and that's why we asked for the variances. The challenges that we're working around an existing curb cut on 20 that we have to marry to where valve lane is. We have an existing detention pond of theirs that we can't alter. We can only reshape. We have a farm pond in the middle of the site that we've got to deal with, and we have the influence of everybody's stormwater coming on top of us. So the alleyways where the stormwater comes on the back of us make a good idea for rear entry units. We don't have many front entry units. That was one of the things we were told, is that the city does not want front entry units. And then the ordinance allows a way to work it in. So we have very few front entry units. I would say, barely 10% of the site. But again, if the desire is to have townhouses on the site and we're stuck with 26 feet, I don't think is the issue, because 25 is what the ordinance says, but nobody has a 25-foot unit. So it's a 26-foot unit. So our marketing arm is the 22-foot and 24-foot people for front car and rear entry.
How would 24-foot impact your plan, do you think?
Yeah. One more question real quick. You said something about a restaurant might be interested. Were you going to be, is it going to be on the property that you're purchasing?
We're purchasing the whole tract.
Okay.
So even where the
Sure.
commercial piece is up
Yeah.
front,
But didn't you just say that you were going to possibly give up some of the tracts for townhouses for the restaurant?
that restaurant layout would take it's a 2-acre site. The one that's on there right now is 1.2. So the only way to get to 2 acres is to go deeper back in. And that row of 10 townhouses that's immediately behind that restaurant, those would go away. We'd have to reorient the site. So in essence, we'd have less townhouses, but I would
So
take
you'd
out,
have less townhouses whether or not you have,
if we have a bigger commercial use, we'll have less townhouses no matter what.
so, one way or the other, if you had, a variance or not a variance, you might have less townhouses. So the variance might work one way or the other.
We'd never have more.
Yeah.
We'd never have more than what you see right now.
Yeah.
I promise you
So
that.
the variance may not be an issue.
We don't think it is, and we feel like it makes.
So it's
us
not
more
really
marketable.
that much of an issue because the restaurant might take it up.
Well, there's a couple, we don't know if the restaurant's going to take up.
You
because
don't.
the Restaurant may go.
But yeah,
Another thing I want to point out,
I don't
it's,
think-
it's 25 feet or greater, you're not.
but the
limited to
can't, yeah,
25
we've already gone down the path of the variance. with
Well,
the
he
city.
said it's limited to 25 feet. If you have to be prepared, and if it's okay with you, if you grant a variance, then that opens up Pandora's box,
Correct.
and you are going to have other ones less.
Yeah.
If you're prepared for that,
That's what I'm thinking.
that's fine, but.
So he's
We
already,
just approved that last month.
he's
And
already
if we
prepared to
change
give
our
up
own wording,
space.
which we said
Yeah.
last month, we are changing it. So then we are opening the door for everybody.
Right,
else.
right. Well, that's my point.
So really, we
So-
have to work on the ordinance before we even talk about this variance 15 days after we just approved
Right.
something.
We're not talking about
Yeah.
this one property. We're
Yeah.
talking about the city.
Yeah,
a
city worked
whole.
really hard on that variance. And so
Okay.
I think we should just leave it be, in my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, sorry, Eric, if I may, before we go too far down the path of deliberation, if we can open up the public.
Yes,
Sure.
okay,
Because
All right.
there may be some evidence from the public that we're not hearing.
good point. Okay. Well, why don't we at this time hear people who have signed up?
We do have one to sign up to speak on behalf of all three, but since we are only talking about item C1, I'll call up Mr. George Kelichek.
Good evening, everyone. George Kelichek, board member, Rockdale Soil Water Conservation District, and also founder of the worldwide organization, Eye of the Taxpayer. I have several questions regarding this plan. First of all, we have 17% poverty in Rockdale County. Secondly, the average wage is $54,000. When you take out healthcare insurance, on average, the Rockdale citizen has $47,000 a year to spend. Now, I'm not even putting food or any of those mortgages or rent or anything else into that calculation. Rockdale County citizens cannot afford a $250,000 to $280,000 townhome. It's plain and simple. Will there be a 100-year hydrology study done for stormwater and its runoff effects? The width of the streets, if you will go to the Enclave neighborhood in Newton County, where they have this type of townhome development, a fire truck can't even get down the middle of the street when you have a average size car on both sides. So you have many things that you, as a board, that you need to look at as we move forward. I will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure if there's anyone online that has raised their hand to speak or not.
Okay.
Has there? No, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. We're now, the public meeting is closed. Or now we're in discussion again. We've talked about,
Chairman, see that there's someone popping up that they would Knob Hill.
Yeah.
That would
oh,
like.
okay. All right. I apologize. I thought there wasn't anybody speaking. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Good evening. This is Edith Wallace with the Knob Hill Subdivision. Knob Hill Subdivision is less than 1 mile off of Highway 20. Our concern is with traffic. Has there been any studies concerning the traffic that would infiltrate Highway 20 right now on a daily basis, because there's only one way in and out of Knob Hill? Our concern, which has been a concern for quite a while, even when we had Eastminster School in the back of our subdivision, is the fact that we have to play beat the car every morning. The traffic going in each direction, coming out of Knob Hill, we have to first get onto I-20, beat the traffic, getting onto Highway 20, going in one direction and then going in the other direction. So what studies have been done with the additional traffic that putting these subdivisions, these townhouses in, is going to create on the traffic flow, because a problem already exists for our subdivision.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this zoning request did not require a traffic study on impacts to Miller Chapel or Georgia 20.
Okay. Can you answer the question about hydrology? Isn't that required at one point?
Yes, sir. So prior to a land development permit being issued, a number of things have to take place. An engineered site plan, engineered construction plans have to be created, and a hydrology study has to be performed. The hydrology study that's performed will have to meet the minimum standards adopted by the state of Georgia and the Blue Book. The city had just recently in November updated the stormwater management ordinance as required by the state. So yes, sir, hydrology and stormwater will have to be considered. The state waters, that's the farm pond and the design of it. Mr. Johansson and the city, they're working on identifying where the proximity of that state waters begins. So that should have a rendering fairly soon. And the state waters appears that it's going to begin further down the site instead of up near the where the stormwater confluence comes in behind the Regions Bank.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else signed up online?
I do not believe so.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now we are in discussion. We talked about the approval of the, you mentioned DESAR of the text amendment last month. And we talked about.
C1,
What's that?
which C1.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
One at a
C1.
time.
C1.
We are discussion.
Right.
C1.
It was C1. Yes. Correct. So we're in further discussion and our motions.
I make a motion, we amend the zoning map.
Motion to amend, and you're saying amend the zoning map, but this is also, would we be talking about the conditions also, Scott, on this one? Is this just the zoning map? That's it.
Staff is not recommending any conditions placed upon the requested rezoning. The
Correct.
The criteria for development is within the Gateway Village ordinance that they would have to meet the architectural standards, so on and so forth.
Okay. So the
Yes,
bottom
yes,
line,
absolutely.
staff is recommending approval of C1.
Yes, sir. The staff is recommending approval of the rezoning request for item C1, recommending denial for the variance request.
Yes.
Can we still ask a question?
Oh,
Yes.
sorry.
Go ahead.
You, Scott,
Clarify.
on the entrance and exit that's coming out on State Route 20,
Yes, sir.
is that the road divided at that point?
It is. It's a right in, right out.
Okay.
In other words, my question is your recommendation for the denial of the, modification of the square footage, is this part of C1 also?
Yes, sir. That's a C1.
Okay, right, okay.
Actually, it's the same for all three of them.
Right, yes.
Yes, sir.
Right,
So
right.
we are technically making two decisions
For
in
each one.
For each one.
Yes, sir.
Correct.
So if either we will go with the staff recommendation, which will automatically deny it, or we can go against the staff recommendation and approve it. So then it will go in the favor of the.
Well, no, it's approval, with the staff recommendation, but still changes the official zoning map and everything.
That's right. So it will only do 50% of the.
So for example, Mr. Mudassar, if you wanted to make a motion to approve the requested zoning change from RS14 mixed use village tier 2 to Gateway Village, and then a motion to approve the requested variance, and you wanted to put conditions on that, you could do so. Or you could say deny the variance as requested, or you can come up with a recommendation that you would like to see.
Okay.
Right.
So she have a motion. So what was that motion?
My motion was to approve the
The zoning.
zoning and deny the variance.
So
Staff
you are agreeing
recommendation.
to the staff
I was
as recommended
staying
by
with
staff.
staff recommendation.
That's clear. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I will second that.
Okay, we got a second. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, so motion passes unanimously to accept the staff recommendation of approval of the changing the zoning map and to deny the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
If you will, because it is separate, we'll go to item C2. This is a request to amend the official zoning map from RS14 MXVOD Tier 2 to Gateway Village. This is 2146 Miller Chapel Road. Staff has given the presentation and the staff recommendation. The applicant does have an opportunity to speak, and we will need to hold the public hearing for this as well.
Okay, all right. So we'll have the applicant.
Eric Johansson, Universal Planning Development, 6083 Shadburn Ferry Road, Beaufort, Georgia. The comments that we made on one stand for this case and the third case, so we don't have any other further presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do we have anybody sign up to speak?
Yes, sir, Mr. George Kilichek.
Okay.
If he would like to speak again, he's more than welcome to. Okay.
Okay,
Anyone online?
and online?
Give it a few seconds.
These two messages in the chat, are they old? There are two messages in the chat. Are they old messages or?
They may be. Yes, or they are.
There are old messages.
Yeah, they're all messages, okay. Okay. All right, so no further sign up to speak, so we'll end discussion and our motion.
Motion to approve as per staff recommendation.
Okay. Motion to approve as per staff recommendation.
Second.
Second by Ronnie. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. Item C3.
Yes, sir. This is a request to amend official zoning map from RS14 MXVOD Tier 2 to Gateway Village Urban Village. This is tax parcel 046-001-0052. Same staff report, same staff recommendation, same applicant report. Mr. Kilichek did sign up and speak, and he had the same comments for all three.
Okay. And for the record, Mr. Johansson too.
Yes, that's correct. So,
All right. Now in discussion, motion.
I make a motion, same motion, staff recommendation.
Okay.
Deny the variance.
Okay.
Second.
Motion to approve the staff, second by Ronnie. All in favor, say, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to Rockdale County business. Item R1, to future land use map case number 2021-01. Request to amend the future land use map to redesignate property from light industrial to high density industrial. Location 2021 Old Covington Highway. Size 14.826 acres. Owner DRH Properties. Agent Universal Planning and Development.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The county would like to combine items R1 and R2 as they are related to the same project. The R1 is the future land use map case, and the rezone, and R2 is the rezone.
Okay.
We would also like to allow the petitioner and any supporters, along with the opposition, chance to combine both public hearings. So the total would be 20 minutes for each.
Okay. Okay. There's a motion to amend the agenda for item R1, include item R1 and item R2 in time.
Motion to amend.
Okay.
Second.
Mariani, okay, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed? Okay, so so we will hear item R1, and then R2 is the record rezoning case 2021-01, request to rezone the property for M1 limited industrial zoning to RM multifamily zoning district with conditions, 2021 Old Covington Highway and 0 Salem Industrial Parkway. Size 14.826 acres, owner DRH Properties, LLC, agent Universal Planning and Development, LLC.
Thank you for that consideration, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
So this case is familiar because this was here in February of last year. However, due to notification issues, we have to go back through the process. The Board of Commissioners did approve a rezoning and changed it to the future land use map. However, the court system remanded that back through the process.
Okay.
So this location is behind BJ's in the northwest quadrant of the intersection of 138, sorry. Intersection of Salem Sigmund Road with Interstate I-20. So you have the BJ's right here. This is the location, which also includes an access easement to BJ's from Old Covington Highway, which is misnamed Terry Drive. That's actually the former Salem Industrial Boulevard. The future land use map is currently industrial. And the applicant is wishing to convert this to high density residential. The zoning is currently light industrial, which the applicant is requesting to rezone to multifamily for 153 townhomes. And this is another shot with the parcel numbers. There's a railroad across the street from across Old Covington Highway Southeast. The proposal is 153 units, some of which are in 8-unit buildings, which as part of this process, they will require a variance as a condition. The proposal is also with conditions as proposed by the applicant based upon what the Board of Commissioners approved earlier last year, but with some new conditions. The most important two are include the fact that as a condition of the homeowners association rules and regulations, or the property owners association rules and regulations, the owners of the subject property fully agree and support a maximum of 50% buffer reduction of any required buffering on the property side of the future commercial or industrial development that typically would be imposed. And that is available to staff as an administrative variance. Additionally, on the found plat, the developer is proposing a statement that says it is understood by the residents of this RM zone residential townhouse community that it is located in an area of Rockdale County, Georgia, where other commercial and industrial land uses are also present and were in existence prior to the development of the residential townhouse community. The adjacent and nearby commercial industrial uses do create noises and sounds commonly associated with those types of land uses, and the residents of this residential townhouse community are fully aware of the existence of the adjacent and nearby commercial and industrial land uses prior to their purchase of the residential townhouse units. The applicant has also prepared or provided 3 examples of the front elevations. So when reviewing or evaluating a future land use map amendment request, section 238-4G2 of the Unified Development Ordinance has several questions. The A is whether a proposed future land use map amendment would result in future land use classification that is more consistent with the text and policies of the comp plan than the current classification of the property on the future land use map. Staff believes that the dynamics of Rockdale County is changing and that the Rockdale County comprehensive plan is due for an update at minimum, if not a complete overhaul. And with B, whether the proposed amendment would result in a land use that is more compatible with current and future land use of adjacent and nearby property. The only adjacent properties are the BJ's Wholesale Club and the Courtesy Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram auto dealership to the southwest. The other adjacent properties are undeveloped. Additionally, the properties across Old Covington and the railroad really do not have an impact on this development. Staff believes that there are no publicly financed community facilities in the immediate surrounding area, and the property is currently served by public sewer via the adjacent road. D, the extent to which the proposed amendment would increase adverse impacts on the natural environment. Staff does not believe that this lesser use classification would show any adverse impacts at this time. Whether the proposed amendment would reduce dependence on the automobile. This proposed residential development might not reduce dependence on the automobile. However, it is adjacent to existing commercial development and is in close proximity to the I-20 interchange with Salem Road, along with it being near Sigmund Salem, which was included in the Sigmund Road Gateway study, which staff hopes to present something later on this year. Staff is not aware of any historical or cultural resources in the vicinity of this property, and therefore we do not anticipate any adverse impacts. With G, in looking at the future land use map and understanding that, again, the dynamics of Rockdale County is changing, and having a new county planner who is from the area will help us better determine the proper land use, future land use for this area, as well as the rest of the county. And staff does not believe that this would have any adverse impacts on land in adjacent municipalities and counties. And staff does not believe that negative impacts will occur on public water supply and wastewater collection as long as it is engineered properly. And in violating the rezoning request, there are a few more items that we need to consider. And again, is the zoning proposal permitted as a use that is suitable in view of the use and development of adjacent and nearby property? And again, this is, there's only BJ's Wholesale Club along with the dealership that are developed. The rest of the area is undeveloped. Staff believes that the proposed conditions may protect the existing and future commercial industrial uses and not adversely affect the existing uses of the usability or of the adjacent or nearby property. Additionally, as only 3 adjacent properties are developed, the undeveloped properties may be developed with residential. Staff believes that as an industrial zone property, the parcel will allow for potential owners to engage in the warehouse and distribution uses, which could potentially have a reasonable economic use with the applicant's ability to expand. However, this property has been vacant since the mid-1990s, and industrial developer has not built anything at this location. It is the property owner's concern that the property is not viable due to location for industrial development. Staff does not believe that this proposed 153 unit townhome development will create a burden on existing infrastructure. However, it may increase the population within the given school districts. Staff believes that because Rockdale County is changing, this zoning proposal is in conformity with the future land use map and the policy intent of the comprehensive plan. And with the development throughout the Interstate 20 corridor and proposed changes from Georgia DOT, there are new demands for housing options throughout the Eastern Metro Atlanta area. And the market study submitted by the applicant demonstrates a need and response for housing in Rockdale County. When evaluating the variance requests, section -238-9H1 provides some questions that need to be answered. Staff believes that this variance request to allow more than 6 townhomes units in a building is due to a condition that is peculiar to the land. The existing access easement on Salem Industrial Parkway was approved as a county right-of-way known as Salem Industrial Boulevard 1995. However, that right-of-way was deeded back to the property owner and became a private access easement in 2001. Another similar situation is not known at this time. The property still can be developed with townhome units, but with the less than the request of 150 units. However, the existing and developed private access easement doesn't appear to present a peculiar inconvenience that is more than a mere inconvenience, and staff believes it is an unnecessary hardship for this specific location. So the condition requiring requested relief is not ordinary found in properties of the same zoning district. Another situation within the RM zoning district is not known. However, the former R3 zoning district, which was not included in the adoption of the Unified Development Ordinance back in 2006, did not include the R3. It was left out. Us Point Phase 1, which is a fee simple townhome subdivision approved by the county and recorded, does contain townhouse buildings with more than 6 units. And so having townhome buildings with more than 6 units is not unheard of here in Rockdale County. And staff believes that this condition is created by the regulations of Title II of the UDO, not by an action or actions of the property owner or the applicant. Staff does not believe that this variance will have a significant negative impact on the surrounding non-residential property, and that granting the variance will allow for more residences to support the existing and potential future businesses in the neighborhood. The applicant is proposing 153 units in buildings that contain between 4 and 8 townhome units. This is the minimum variance required, as not all of the buildings will contain 8 units. The There are some that have 4, 5, 6, and I believe there may be at least 1 7. And those are determined by the engineering aspects of this project. And staff does not believe that this variance is against the general spirit and intent of Title II of the UDO or the purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the request to amend the future land use map to redesignate property from light industrial to high density residential and to rezone from M1 to RM with the proposed conditions, including the requested variance and conditioned upon the rezoning site plan. That concludes the staff's report.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The current comprehensive land use plan, when was that adopted?
That was adopted in 2013 and was updated in 2018. We are gearing up to preparation for the update in 2022, 2023.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
There were some concerns last time this was brought up. I don't remember what they were, but I remember there were concerns the county had.
Yes, sir. There were definitely concerns that that staff and the planning commission had. However, the board of commissioners and the former planning director did work with the developers in constructing a series of conditions that staff believed addressed our previous concerns.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Now hear from the applicant.
Mr. Chair, do you mind opening the public hearing?
Yeah.
Actually, are you the applicant or the?
She's the agent applicant.
Okay, so you're the agent. Okay.
Thank you. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Commission. Thank you so much. My name is Kelly Littlefield. I am the consultant for Universal Development, and I'm here on behalf of DRH Properties as well. And we are going to be discussing this amazing project this evening. So this is a 153 unit townhome development that is proposed. As you can see, some of the buildings do have the 8 units. However, you will see that most of them do not. And I would also like to direct you, if for a moment, something that is remarkably unique to Rockdale County and the housing developments that they have here is the amount of green space in this townhome development. I'm sure that many of you have been out to Ellis Point and other housing developments that are in Rockdale County, and you will notice that there's not nearly as much green space as you see on this concept plan. So I would like that noted as part of the director and the developer working together, the previous director and developer working together to create an aesthetic that is very much so directed towards Rockdale County. This does sit between Old Covington Highway and adjacent to BJ's Warehouse. The roads would be private. And also the other thing that I would like to direct you to is that while we are asking for some of the buildings to house 8 units, this still sits well below the density requirement or allotment of 12 units per acre. There is detention and retention that's proposed on the site as well as private streets. So there's not a right-of-way issue in conjunction with that. What I would like to do at this time is to remainder the remainder of my time to rebuttal. If there's any opposition to speak, and forfeit that time back to the end after opposition.
Okay,
And I'll be glad to answer any questions at that time, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
that's a,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Okay. This time we'll hear any rebuttal. I mean, not rebuttal, opposition. Anybody signed up?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have a Doug Dillard. May I remove the mask, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, it's the same. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm Doug Dillard with Dillard and Sellers. And Jeff Haymore and I represent the property owner that is adjacent, which is Rosen Conyers LLC. They own the property on which the BJ's is located under some sort of long-term lease. The Rosen property, as you well know, is contingent to the subject tract before you tonight to rezone from M1 to RM. While Rosen supports the rezoning, and I can recall when I zoned this property, I guess it was in the 90s sometime, we knew that Mr. Williams was going to be coming forward with the multifamily. So this is no surprise, but we're very concerned about how it's being proposed, how it's being developed, and the protections that might be unavailable to future occupants of these townhomes relative to the activities that go on the BJ's property. So I'm going to address those differences, and I'm going to have a suggestion for a solution to what we are faced with. The purpose of the zoning, the Rosen supports the rezoning on the condition that an earthen berm and evergreens be installed as shown on tab A. Otherwise, it opposes the zoning. So if you look at the information that we've given you, turn to the tab A, you will see a site plan that basically says and shows how we think this property should be developed. And that is designed and put together as a result of a noise study that we had done that I will give to you later. I'll point out the applicant has not done a noise study. So I think that's important for you to think about. The purpose of this zoning condition is to provide sound attenuation and physical separation between the proposed residential use and the BJ's, particularly the loading docks and the gas canopy. As contiguous property owners, it is the beneficiary of a reciprocal deed covenants within the applicant. Our client has standing to be heard and will suffer special damages. If approved without our suggested conditions, it could be somewhere between $500 and $1 million. We think that's unreasonable. Now, the specific language of the zoning condition we seek is set forth in our letter to you and in the materials that you have in front of you. Now, this berm plan we propose is just not a pie in the sky application. It's a real developed site plan as a result of the noise study that we have done, and nobody has rebutted the noise study. It's based strictly on the noise study that my client has commissioned. That study is shown as tab B,
in your materials that we've given you, the applicant has not found its own noise study. I submit to you that the letter that they put in the record today from Kevin Kennerly is far lacking as a response to the noise study that we did. In fact, the applicant proposed the burn plan based on that noise study. And it's based on actual measurements of the noise generated by BJs measured from the proposed development. The top line conclusion of the noise study is that by building the berm to the heights and lengths that's set forth in tab A, the noise from BJs will be all shielded except for an occasional street sweeper and loud booms from material being dropped into the park trailer, which is a finding that's number 3 on the study. There are additional measures like better construction insulation in the townhouses that would eliminate all noise, but in the spirit of cooperation, my client is okay with simply requiring the berm as shown on tab A. Any berm length or height less than that shown on tab A will not be effective, and the applicant has not offered any competing noise study to refute the one that we have had done. The berm is for the benefit of all parties, the landowners, BJs, and the future townhome residents. Now, the owner of the Williams property admitted in the judicial pleadings, which is on tab C in your material, that it was willing to install an earthen berm and an evergreen planting in the interest of both properties and their current occupants. Yet now, the owner of the Williams properties appears unwilling to plant the berm, or at least not to the requisite size as recommended by our suggested plan. Instead, it simply proposes a zoning condition, which is number 3, to include within the homeowner's covenants. Listen to this, this is important. To list within the homeowner's covenants a warning to new residents that they're buying next to an industrial property. Well, that doesn't protect anyone. I mean, they've got actual notice of what, of BJs and what's going on out there. And we all know that new home buyers rarely read these covenants, and besides words on a page, they don't do anything actually to solve the noise issue. And that's what we're concerned about. Without the requested zoning condition, the earthen berm barrier is all that is but certain that the new residents of the proposed residential development will complain to their elected officials, to you guys, about the noise from BJs, which is customary in such retail establishments. As you know, Rockdale County doesn't have a comprehensive noise ordinance, let alone one applicable here where residential development encroaches into existing retail uses and industrial zoning. Now, we're not before you last April because we didn't know about it. The county and the applicant acknowledged the defective rezoning and sent it back to you guys to rezone properly. Had we been given proper notice of those public hearings, we would have appeared before you then to request the zoning conditions. We're here now to request you only approve this rezoning with the zoning condition with our berm plan.
Credibility comes from standing.
Otherwise, sir, we oppose the rezoning as follows. First, the RM zoning is not consistent with the future land use map, which recommends the future land use be light industrial. That's why before you denied in the application to change the map from light industrial to high density residential. It's not there. Second, the site plan before you shows 14 buildings within more than 6 units. And as you may know, the zoning code limits the number to 6. You can recommend approval of a site plan not in compliance with the zoning code, but at least not one without an applicant going through the rezoning process. Variances are not granted by you. As you know, variances go to the Board of Adjustment. Neither the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners can recommend, let alone approve a variance. Only the Board of Adjustments can do that. So we suggest that you approve or recommend approval to the Board of Commissioners in accordance with our site plan and the conditions that we submit to you, which is inclusive not only of what staff has recommended, but is also inclusive of our site plan as it relates to this particular property. And I think it's important. You can't grant the variance, and they've shown more than 6 units in these units. It's not within your jurisdiction to grant the variance. Now, you can approve the zoning, but the variance is another issue, and that significantly affects their overall density. So submit to you that you recommend in accordance with our suggested compromise, which is it's offered as a compromise, and we're here to avail ourselves to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a particular question. The earthen berm you're requesting, is it actually partly on BJ's property, is it not, from what I'm seeing here?
I didn't understand the question.
The earthen berm between the properties, is it partially on your client's property too, from what I'm seeing?
Huh.
It encroaches on.
Yeah, yes, the berm is between our property and their property.
So
That's
that would be
correct.
acceptable, obviously, to your client.
As we have shown it on that site.
If it approaches.
Yes, yes.
And what is the concern of BJ's in terms of litigation? The homeowners would file suit because of the noise.
Well, they have noise out there with trucks unloading and all that stuff all times of the day. We are concerned that that would result in some sort of claim by those property owners. We think the berm would minimize, if not eliminate, those potential claims.
And what they put in their disclaimer, the homeowners acknowledging the noise, is not legally binding, or that?
We don't think the suggested condition by the staff is legally binding. Yeah.
No, I mean, they're requiring as in the homeowners, the developers agreed to put in something that homeowners acknowledge the noise from the adjacent commercial.
I'm not sure that an acknowledgement, let's say you've got the closing documents and you've got some statement in there that they waive any right to pursue a claim against BJ's. That's a claim against a third party that's not available at the closing table. I don't think it's enforceable.
My question. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we have a Joseph Fusil in opposition as well.
May I remove my mask?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Joe Fusil with Hartman, Simons and Wood. I'm here on behalf of BJ's Warehouse. All right. And if I may just start off with an answer to your question. We're very concerned. This is something that BJ's is a nationwide company. It doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while we'll be in this situation. And it is BJ's goal to be a good community member. And we really don't want people complaining about noise, complaining about, deliveries at 3 a.m., complaining about, our operations, trucks backing up, beep, 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 those are things that happen on industrial property. And I think it just really drives home the fact that these uses are not compatible. The staff report says that the compatibility of the two is in the eye of the beholder. Well, I would offer that it's not in the eye of the beholder. It's actually in the ordinance that they're incompatible. There's a 75-foot buffer required between the two. Unfortunately, BJ's is already there. So there isn't a 75-foot buffer. So what are we going to do? I mean, we do a 75-foot buffer on the other side of the property line? That's not fair. I mean, that takes up a big chunk of their profit and their development. So we've been trying to come up with creative solutions because again, staff indicates that the conditions that are offered may protect the property. I mean, that's the word for word out of the staff report, may protect the property and the adjacent property. Well, may is a pretty big risk for properties that are already there. And you're going to have residents in these townhomes that are in very close proximity to the noisiest part of our property. You know, when the property was developed, there's a reason why the loading dock is on that side. That was the undeveloped area. And it was also zoned industrial. So there was no concern about whether people would be in proximity to those loading docks. And to Doug's point, we're not really opposed to the townhomes. We just think that they need to be properly conditioned. There needs to be strict conditions on how they're developed so that the two uses can be made more compatible. I mean, like I said, the ordinance clearly finds them compatible. The applicant finds them incompatible to the point where they want to put a warning on and it's not in the covenants, it's actually on the plat. So I'm not sure anybody would ever read it. But even if they did read it, in Georgia, the reason that we have planning commissions is to look at these kind of things from different perspectives, people from different backgrounds. The ordinances are not meant to be applied, you know, vanilla. Humans need to participate and look at what's being proposed and say, do we want to be scratching our heads for the next 20 years thinking, how did this happen? Why are these two so close together? And there's nothing keeping them apart. Why is codes enforcement out there every 3 days trying to figure out if there really is a problem or if BJ's just operating business as usual? So I would offer that, again, we're not opposed, but we really feel like there needs to be strict conditions. We've worked with the applicant on several options. We thought we had reached agreement on this berm, and we're very surprised when they came back and submitted an application without it. So again, we don't really want to be in this position. We feel like we're forced to be in this position to say that if the berm isn't going to be part of it, then we are opposed, and we would ask you to deny the proposal or require the berm to try and make these incompatible land uses more compatible. And I've submitted some materials. I didn't bring enough for everybody. I submitted them for the record. They preserve our rights and also point out a lot of the things that I'm talking about. Also what Doug mentioned about the variance, this being the improper forum for that. So again, I just wanted to offer BJ's perspective as the long-term tenant. We've been there 20 years. Everybody knows where we are, and we want to be a good neighbor. We don't really want to create disruptions for the county or for the county board, and strongly believe, as we've experienced in other places of the country, if this is allowed to go forward, that it will be a 20-year problem. People will be scratching their heads wondering how this occurred. So, thank you.
Any other oppositions here or online?
Yes, sir. I do believe this is the last of the opposition who are here in the auditorium. There's a Mr. Joseph who wishes to speak in opposition as well.
Okay.
Via Zoom.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for the opportunity to speak. Joe McGuire, I'm with Rosen Conyers LLC. I'm the developer of the project. And it was about 20 years ago that I came to Conyers to develop this BJ's Wholesale Club, and I met Jay Williams, and I bought the property from Jay Williams. Jay and I enjoyed a great working relationship developing the project. We didn't always agree on everything, but we always found a way to make things work when we didn't agree on something, and I maintain tremendous respect for Jay Williams today. In September of 2019, Jay called me looking for letters of support for the project next to our BJ's, from our company and from BJ's. And I reached out to BJ's to discuss the project with them. I sent them the site plan and I conveyed Jay's request. And they immediately said they could not provide such support for the project, that they have issues with sounds and noise complaints at other clubs near residential property. And this particular plan had many townhouses right up on the property line, but they would reconsider the request in the future and possibly support the project if presented with a sound attenuation plan for their review. In May of 2020, I was again contacted by Jay Williams and his associate Eric Johansson regarding the project. I again voiced BJ's concern regarding noise and the number of townhouses right up on the property line, and the fact that BJ's gets most of their deliveries in the middle of the night. I pointed out that the loading area and also the BJ's gas was only about 125 to 150 feet from the bedroom windows of many of the townhomes that were showing on the site plan they sent. air brakes, reverse gear alarms, beeping, forklifts, in such close proximity to all those townhomes right up on the property line seemed like a recipe for trouble and was exactly what BJ's was concerned about. On June 10th of 2020, I received an email from Eric Johansson where he pointed out and shared with me in that email string that the builder they were working with to purchase the property and develop the townhomes for over 1 year, Rockland Properties had the exact same concerns. And in an email to Eric Johansson from their buyer and builder, Rockland Homes, on June 9th, 2020, Rockland Homes indicates that the only way we see a proper buffer working is to create a berm between the properties. There was an attachment to that email, which was a site plan generated by Eric Johansson, that a proposed berm that would run along the property line between BJ's and the townhome property would be built by DRH Properties. So what preceded that plan from DH Properties on June 10th, proposing they're building the berm along the property line that was recommended by their builder. I told Eric and Jay at the time I thought we were headed in the right direction. I was going to hire a sound consultant so that we made sure we dotted every I, crossed every T, and that we had a professional report telling us exactly how much noise BJ's generated, how loud it was, what time of the night it was, helping us make sure we got ahead of this and that we did everything we could to mitigate sound issues. I commissioned the report. I received the report on July 6th, and I immediately sent the report to Jay Williams and Eric that day that indicated that the noise concerns were real and we had some work to do. So when they got the report, I actually was enthusiastic because I thought while we all had concerns that there was a way to fix this. Nothing seemed remarkable to me and that I wasn't expecting. So Eric and I went to work, and for weeks, Eric and I worked on a site plan, tweaking the berm, making it higher and making it work as close as we could to what was in that sound report. The sound report indicated the berm needed to come up to 836 elevation at some points. We had gotten to that point, and on July 16, 2020, Eric sent me a site plan with a berm that worked. So at that point, I'm thinking we're all good. I know a question was asked earlier about some part of the berm being on our property. We had agreed as compromise that we would spend up to close to estimates, $250,000 on our own, on our property, relocating utilities, relocating stormwater structures, building a substantial amount of retaining wall so that the berm could get up high enough to be effective, but that we still stayed compliant with code. So I sent it to BJ's. BJ's said that they would review everything, and subject to everything being what I said it was, as they said earlier, they seemed to indicate that if everything was what I said upon their completion of review, that they would go along and support the project. I was surprised that right about that time, when I sent a document to Eric and Jay memorializing all of this, I heard from their attorney, Mr. Stoops, and then everything went quiet, and here we are now. So I have to tell you, I thought back in July we were at the 1 yard line and this was done and fixed. I'm concluding now. I was surprised when Eric and Jay would no longer communicate with me and everything was through Mr. Stoops. And we seemed like everything we had worked on there was gone. And I was surprised then, I'm surprised now. We will support this project with the berm in the form that it was last submitted to us as designed by the property owner's consultant, Eric Johansson. And that's where we stand, and I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay. What is the terms of our time, and anybody else up to speak?
So the applicant did request some time to present a rebuttal.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Scott Hoops. I'm an attorney. I represent the applicant. This is probably the first case that I'm aware of, and I've done the research and I've not heard of any other case whatsoever where you have somebody that's complaining that the noise that they're creating someday might impact or affect a future development and people that live in a future development. So in other words, what their complaint is they're concerned that someday someone might complain to their elected official. Well, that could be for any development. That could be for any rezoning. You could say anybody could complain maybe in the future that there might be some sound or noise coming from the property. And that's certainly not a standard that I'm aware of in the state of Georgia, that you're required as part of a rezoning to eliminate all sound or to substantially reduce the sound to acceptable levels based on the World Health Organization standards for an acceptable good night's sleep, which is what I will go into concerning the sound study was based on the World Health Organization. This goes back and they was correctly noted that in 2001, actually both parcels were owned by Mr. J. Williams or his respective companies. And he actually sold this property that's now the adjacent Rosen BJ's property to Rosen Conyers LLC in 2001. As part of that, it was made known that the property, my client's property and the applicant's property would be eventually requested to be rezoned to multifamily. In fact, the REA specifically references at the time that BJ's, they had already signed a long-term commercial lease with BJ's. So they knew that BJ's was coming in on a long-term commercial lease of 20 years, plus I'm sure renewal terms. And they provided in section 15 of that REA for the multifamily. There's of interesting note, there are no conditions that were put in there. It just says that anytime my client can seek and rezone the property for multifamily use, period. If they were concerned, and they already know, again, on page 1, it references BJ's, if they were so concerned about potential noise and someday someone might complain of sound noises, that would have been a perfect opportunity in the REA to throw that in there. If you do it though, because they're negotiating, these are business people negotiating a contract, you need to add a berm. You need to add sound attenuating remedial measures to make sure that someday someone might not complain to an elected official. But they didn't. In fact, in the REA in section 15, it goes on further that says that there's a relief, a remedy in there that was negotiated between the parties that said, but if you do get the property rezoned, then we have the right to close off that road, that access point. So this was all negotiated in 2001, and wouldn't that have been nice, considering the fact that they knew that BJ's was coming in, if they had put conditions in there? They didn't, and what they're doing now is they're trying to get around the REA, or they're trying to make this almost unmarketable for my client to be able to resell to builders. Let me be clear about something. There is no surprise that there's a large BJ's commercial warehouse at the adjacent property. Nobody's going to buy a townhouse and all of a sudden wake up at 4 in the morning, hear beeping noises from a truck, and be startled and wonder where that's coming from. If anything, it's constructive notice. That's express actual notice that there's a BJ's next door. So if somebody buys it, you don't even need to put language on a final plat. You don't need to record anything. In Georgia, there's 2 different forms of notice: actual notice, constructive notice. Actual notice is you can go to the property and you can look and you can see a large BJ's right there. Mr. Dillard, counsel for Rosen, submitted a letter and spoke eloquently about his client's objections. However, it's interesting that there's an attachment. He attached as Exhibit A to his letter these zoning conditions that they would accept. However, the problem with that is that's not even the plan that's been submitted for consideration as part of the rezoning application. This appears to be an old proposed plan that was as part of negotiations going back and forth, that doesn't even have the road that currently exists that cuts through the property. As you can see, it's nowhere there because that's not even what's being before this committee for consideration. And so the objection is based on something that's not there and that's not being presented. And they want this large berm on a proposed plan that it's the only way they're going to accept this, rezoning application based on a site plan that's not even the site as it's being proposed. Second, I heard different references both by counsel for BJ's and counsel for Rosen, where they talked about this indication on the final plat that, hey, you're buying this next to a commercial warehouse building and business. I find it ironic that they're bringing that up and trying to use that now against my client and saying even they recognize that there's going to be noise coming from them, when it was actually the contesting party, BJ's, who recommended that this provision be put in the final plat. They're the ones that asked my client to put that in there. And we looked at that. I don't think that it provides some amazing revelatory moment where people are now all of a sudden going to have notice. And I don't think that people sit there and read the final plat, but it was actually at the suggestion of the objectors. And we said, okay, that's reasonable. We'll put it in there. And so we put it in there, and now they're using it against us, which is very strange. Very quickly, the sound study is absurd, and to suggest that that nobody has rebutted the sound study is equally absurd. When we reviewed it, first of all, we said we didn't believe a sound study was necessary because the basis of the sound study was, let's see if we can create this high berm, which came back, by the way, to be about at certain locations between 15 to 25 feet high. So the sound study goes into detail about a high berm that we didn't even want, with recommendations that are unreasonable. No builder's gonna come in and see these conditions imposed as part of this sound study. I mean, this sound study goes into the height of the berm being between 15 and 25 feet, raising the berm, or having walls installed on top of the berm, or a 15 to 20 foot high wall berm, earthen berm, with walls on top, and apparently with landscaping everywhere. What an unsightly proposal or request that they're making. And so we don't believe that sound study is worth a hill of beans, to be honest with you. It also goes into absurd conditions of exactly what type of materials even that have to be constructed. Now, the objectors are saying, well, we don't really need that. We're okay with the big berm. Well, of course they are. What they want is a large earthen berm going all the way across between the two properties at a considerable expense of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that they want imposed that my client has to pay, or you know what? They're not going to agree to it. You spend $500,000 giving us a nice earthen berm, and you put a bunch of trees on the top, and even though it's going to be unsightly, it's going to hide BJ's, and it's going to avoid all the sound. Well, if that's all that's required, can you imagine if anybody applies for zoning, all the adjacent property owner has to do is say, we want a 50-foot berm, object, throw a tantrum, refuse to agree to it, show up to a meeting, object to it, and contest it all the way along, appeal it because they're not getting a 50-foot berm. Wouldn't that be nice to stand up there and always contest unless you get something that's very high so you never hear a dog bark, you never hear kids play. This berm that they're proposing is to potentially eliminate everything, all the sound, or close to it. And I don't even think that's reasonable, nor should it be considered. We object to the standing. We don't believe that BJ's or Rosen has standing to make this objection. And that's my response to the legal issues and arguments. And I believe Kelly will stand up and conclude, and perhaps Mr. Johansson quickly.
I have a quick question.
Yes,
Your
sir.
client, and maybe you can explain why your client agreed in court. I assume that that's what I hear, if that's true, and has agreed all along to build this earthen berm. And what has changed?
What has changed?
If that's true.
Correct. So we were negotiating at a certain point to do a berm. And it certainly wasn't this ridiculous berm. It came back based on the sound study that they wanted this berm to be 20 something feet high and run along the entire way. We were entering into discussions with them concerning, well, what is the height of the berm? And then it came to the cost, and they're the ones that want the berm. We don't want the berm. So if you want the berm, pay for the berm. And that's where it broke down when we looked at it, and it was $500,000-$600,000 to put this unsightly berm along the entire line of the property. And it broke down from there. We were willing to do something reasonable. And in fact, recently, we even submitted a new grading plan to them that had a smaller type of berm. We offered to put, to cover the cost of this smaller berm, to plant landscaping, double, triple rows of evergreens along there to make it look nice, to try to eliminate some of the sound. And that was rejected. And the response was, we want our large berm, period.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tanner, where am I on time, please? Okay. All right. So before Mr. Johansson comes back to the podium, what I would like to say to the Planning Commission is, if you drive down Old Covington Highway, which is an arterial road in Rockdale County, if you drive down Sigmund Road, if you drive down Salem Road, you will see industrial property that sits adjacent to residential property. And you will see landscape strips in between it. You'll see enhanced buffers. You'll see evergreens that are planted. Very rarely do you hear noise complaints of those residents regarding the industrial property that they sit adjacent to, because whenever you enter into an agreement, into a land transaction, you go and look at what you're going to be next to as a residential property owner. So we would like to address that in that manner. The zoning ordinance does not require a buffer on the part of the residential of the RM zone property. If you look at the buffer requirement, it doesn't require it on the part of the RM zone property, the residential property owner. It requires it on the industrial. And as was alluded to by the legal team from BJ's, from Rosen Group, they did state that BJ's is already there. So what we're proposing to do is to put that enhanced landscape strip. We're also proposing to put in materials that are natural materials, that including cement fiber, the brick, the stone, the stucco products. And then also, again, Universal Developers is looking to develop this. Terrace, if I could have the site plan back up again. They are looking to develop this in such a way that it includes a dog park inside. There's also a pocket park proposed. That's a fun iteration. They're also looking to provide plenty of green space in this, and also it'll be private streets. So this does enhance Rockdale County's housing stock as is proposed by the Sigmund Road study. And also it provides a product that does not exceed that density level. So we are looking to provide a product that is compatible with Rockdale County for a single family attached townhome development. This is single family. It is owner occupied is what the proposal is, and it's designed to be compatible with Rockdale County design standards. And so with that, if there are any questions for me, if we could pause time.
Any questions, Ms. Littlefield?
I have several, actually. I have quite a few. Is there any way you can put the parks, all the green space, reconfigure any of the issues that BJ's have along the area that they think more of the noise will be. Like redirect the residential away from the.
But before you ask Karen, I have a question, really to Mr. Chairman.
Well,
how we are assuming that we have changed the zoning? I mean, all this information.
We
have not changed the zoning.
No, we haven't done anything. We're asking
So
questions.
really, whatever we are listening is like, we have already changed the zoning. So now we are trying to find a solution to fix that zoning issue, what we have already changed.
We just asked some questions if that were to happen. We've not.
Because all this, 20 minutes, what I heard is like, we have already changed the zoning. So now these are the questions which are coming up.
No, these would be the questions to ask though, before we change.
Okay.
We change the zoning and before we make that if it happens, what's.
So to answer Mr. Ahmad's question, so as Tiris presented, Mr. Petrie presented in his presentation and staff presentation, the zoning was reversed per a court proceeding.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like the zoning never happened previously.
Yeah.
However, previously, all of these conditions were approved
by the Board of Commissioners.
Not by Planning Commission.
So those conditions were approved though by the Board of Commissioners. In answer to Ms. Benton's question, if I can barely see you, in answer to Ms. Benton's question, this is a preliminary concept design, and there will be a design review process that we go through with the planning department.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are certainly considerations that we can make. However, this is the current concept plan that we're working off of, and it's the proposed development.
Sure. I just feel that there's a way you can make this happen. I understand from the business point of view. This is a litigious world. They are business people. They know that people will find a way to follow suit. Yes, there are places. It comes to mind, Lowe's and some Silver Summit or whatever it is. I'm certain there are trucks that come in there at night. I'm sure there are noises that are made.
And it should be noted that that's a senior living.
But they do live near a place that delivers and has trucks coming in, right?
Yes, ma'am. But the point I was trying to make is that's a senior living facility.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that senior living facility, they have a due diligence that they perform in terms of response to the community and response to quote unquote noise associated with industrial properties.
So they wouldn't have different.
No, they would be the same.
Any other person?
They would be the same. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's an agreement.
Okay, make agreements with other residents. That is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm saying. You could have these conversations with the businesses and come to agreements. And if you cannot, then it's not going to happen. Then you're not going to be able to make these things happen. Then there's obviously other issues that it's not going to happen. So maybe y'all can come to agreements when it comes to that. Maybe it doesn't need a berm, or maybe it does need a berm, but come to some conclusions. So
I would like to add something. If BJ's anticipates lawsuits down the road, I can understand that. But I feel like there's got to be an area of cooperation here between the two property owners. It appears to me that one is saying, I'm not going to build a berm, or I'm not going to pay for the berm. You want it, you pay for it. I understand the noise possibilities, but I also see that there's room for cooperation here, and I don't see the cooperation out there. I don't see one of them saying, well, how about splitting the cost of the berm? A reduced berm. If 25 foot's too high, let's do another sound. I don't understand the lack of cooperation here.
I wanted to speak, and I wanted to kind of go on with Thomas, what he's saying, and actually what Karen is saying too. I don't think this is the format to come into agreement with. I don't think here is where you want to come in and force us to give you guys guideways to come into agreement. Hopefully, and it hasn't happened here, I would hope that you would come to agreement, come into a plan that is acceptable to both parties prior to coming to this format here. That's what I would hope. And that.
Mr. Chair, if there are any other questions, we do have a little bit of time remaining in our rebuttal, and we do have another speaker.
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
The site plan you presented, it's not conditioned to that site plan. It could be completely different.
It's conditioned to the property.
Right, correct.
Yes, sir.
So what we're, just to be clear, what we're looking at may not be anything like what it will be.
It is the concept plan that we present. It's not a fully engineered site plan. No, sir, that's what's required for the LDP, for the zoning condition, for the zoning application. There's a concept plan that has to be presented.
So,
fully engineered drawings are part of the LDP.
So then the answer to the question would be, it may be completely different than what we're seeing.
It wouldn't be so far away from what you're seeing. The potential of it being, it's currently an 8 and you're asking me if it's going to be a 3. No, sir. But it is a site plan it's a concept plan that we have to submit initially for a zoning amendment.
Okay. Like you say, there's a dog park. I mean, that's not conditioned to that. You can put it in, you don't have to put it in.
But the green space requirements don't change.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. We can hear it.
It's okay.
Okay. All right. So you have some time left.
Okay. I yield the remainder of my time to my colleague. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening again, Eric Johansson, Universal Planning Development. There's been a lot of money spent on legal fees. There's a lot of money sitting in this room right now on hourly rates talking about berms and buffers. You guys didn't have the authority to knock 2 feet off a townhouse request a little bit ago. I don't think you have the authority to impose a $700,000 berm on our site. This is not a 10-foot landscape strip. If they are so concerned about 36 feet tall, go out and take your $250,000 that was never proposed to us until today and go build a highway wall. Go get one of those white walls and stick it on your property and get to 36 feet tall and you got it. There's no buffer required by the ordinance. We have conditions that protect our site. We acknowledge that we're in a commercial area. We get that. There's been a lot of stuff going back and forth. That's why there was a lawsuit. You're right. This is not the place to talk about this. This is just the point to deflect and pick on words out of ordinances. In my opinion, this is on a lease negotiation, trying to get your rate down and buying as much time as you can. So I appreciate y'all listening to this for the 3rd time. I wish we weren't back the 3rd time. Had the advertising not been incorrect the first time, we wouldn't be back the 3rd time, but we are. And it wasn't up to us to notice anybody. The county notices. So don't listen to any notices weren't sent on our behalf and have words twisted. So I appreciate your time and we appreciate you listening to this again.
I do have one question. You said we don't have the ability to knock off. We didn't have the ability to knock off things for the previous zoning, but aren't we doing that now with variances with this zoning?
Oh, if you impose a $700,000 berm that you've never imposed on any other site, you are.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the variances you're requesting. You're asking to change things on this.
I think you have all the right in the world to go to 8 units the acre. Your ordinance right now says that we have to have all rear entry units and can't park in the front yard.
No, my point is you made the point we didn't have the ability to knock off the townhomes, but we do have the ability to knock off things in this.
I'm just saying what it is. I don't think you're going to do it. I think you're going to recommend denial on it. So I'm just pointing out that if you couldn't knock off 1 foot there so we can make a successful development, you can't impose $700,000 here.
The point is we didn't knock off anything.
I agree. So we shouldn't even be talking about $700,000.
Okay.
The court should be doing
But you have variances you're requesting on, we're not talking about the berm, okay? But you have variances you're requesting for your property.
And we think they're vital and we're necessary, and we have hardships, and we have a road going through the middle of the site
that create them, and we submitted a lot of documentation on this.
I know you do, but you made the point about the last one.
I understand. I'm just making sure y'all don't impose a $700,000 berm as a condition.
All right. Okay.
Because you don't have authority to do that if you can't knock up.
Just second.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Is there any, then we're done. We're closing the public hearing. Or Terrace?
Yes, sir. If the public hearing, if nobody else wishes to speak, well, they're out of time anyways. And again, staff recommends approval of the request for the future land use map change, along with the rezoning, which includes the proposed conditions and the variance.
There was a question, do we have I guess the county believes that we have the authority to do variances and it doesn't go to the Board of Zoning and Appeals or variances? Or
All right.
you're not. I guess that's a legal question that we don't.
Correct. That is.
Okay.
Staff is recommending approval as mentioned. And
understood. You're not an attorney. Never mind. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Put you on the spot.
The notice did include all the conditions and every single condition, including the eight units per building.
Okay.
We did notify, and it was pretty lengthy notice.
Thank you. Okay. All right. We now close. We're in the discussion. Comments?
And Mr. Chairman, I'll think the same way. Whatever we are discussing here is a court case. This is not the place where we are discussing all this, all the negotiations, what they are doing.
Right.
To me, it looks like a psychological game which is played by this body where they have assumed that this is all being approved and now we are negotiating the terms, how to do it. Really, this body is the decision maker that do we want to change the zoning first or not? And if we want to change the zoning, then we will talk about that, do we allow 6 or 8? Really, that is nothing for us to think about that, will they build a berm or not? This is not even the discussion what we should be doing. We should be discussing, shall we change the zoning? This is an industrial zoning, which is we changing to residential. We denied this, unanimously last time because we thought that it's 1 million lots available in Rockdale County, which can be developed residential, and they are residential. We don't have to change the, some commercial or industrial into residential. So that is the biggest thing. And this business fight, we should not be handling it over here. Okay. That's my opinion.
Okay.
You're correct.
Thank you. I agree.
Absolutely.
To kind of have questions that there are, this is,
I agree.
involves legal.
Everything else is noise.
Legal issues. Someone,
No, I was just saying, I agree.
right, okay.
Chairman,
So the berm is one condition suggested by the opposition, but we, in front of us, and we could say whether we want it or not, but you're right, we have to vote on the zoning and the county's recommendation or any modifications to that. So that being the case, is there any other discussion and/or motions?
There is no discussion.
Okay.
I'll say we deny this zoning change altogether.
Okay. A motion to deny the rezoning from M1 to RM multifamily with conditions.
Second.
Second by Ronnie, okay. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor say aye, and if you'll give your name, please.
Ronnie, aye.
Okay.
Tawada, aye.
Tom is ready.
Okay.
Ahmad, aye.
Okay. Tom did,
aye.
okay. All right. And Ernestine?
Aye.
Okay.
Deny.
Juana?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Karen, I.
Okay. Aye. So motion carries unanimously to deny this rezoning.
We would need to have another vote.
Yes, we also have the next item, R3. A request to rezone R1 single-family residential zoning to M1 limited industrial zoning.
Actually, you just voted on that, so it would be
Oh,
the future
R1.
land use map amendment.
I'm sorry, R3 is a different rezoning. Okay. So we just voted, I apologize, on R2. So we're voting on R1, a request to amend the future land use map to redesignate property from light industrial to high density into residential.
I make a motion to deny.
Okay, motion
Second.
to deny. Second by Ahmad to deny. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any opposed? None opposed. Okay. All righty. Moving on to item R3, rezoning case number 2021-02. A request to rezone from R1 single-family residential zoning district to M1 limited industrial zoning district, location 2420 and 2432 Old Covington Highway. Size is 23.84 acres. The owner is Rockdale 20 Industrial LLC, care of Lincoln Property Company, and the applicant is Rockdale County.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Planning Commissioners. Once again, this is another one that was heard last year and unfortunately was part of collateral damage from a court case related to the townhomes behind BJ's. And so here we go again. So the proposal is for a 360,000 square foot industrial building with semi parking. So this is to the north and west of the interchange of Sigmund Road and I-20, which is the first exit coming from, if I remember right, DeKalb. You have industrial area across the Old Covington Highway, along with another, or if not the same, railroad as down the other end of Old Covington. There is a Wilson Academy, which is adjacent to the property. However, it is non-conforming, pre-existing non-conforming. The future lands map designate this as industrial, and the existing. Thank you. Do apologize. So I-20 Sigmund Road interchange is down here off the map. And this is industrial all around. The Wilson Academy is adjacent to the south. It's industrial, future land use map. It is agricultural. As far as the zoning goes, it is adjacent. It is across the street from industrial zoning. You have I-20, which buffers the commercial area on Iris Drive. And this is another example showing the area along with the parcel numbers. It is currently 2 properties. However, we are working on a combination plat to combine the 2 properties. And this is the 360,000 square foot industrial building with semi-parking for easy access to and from Covington in the front, and then the regular parking behind the building, adjacent to Interstate 20. This property, the previous zoning request, staff recommended approval along with planning commission recommended approval to the board of commissioners who obviously rezoned it. However, we don't want to have, staff believes that it's best to go through this process again and avoid any court costs from any disgruntled neighbors. So the evaluation of the rezoning request has some standards pursuant to the OCGA. The first one is the zoning proposal permitted as a use that is suitable in view of the use and development of adjacent and nearby property? Yes, the staff believes that the proposed use and development it is consistent with adjacent and nearby property as the area is industrial in nature and the purpose of the rezoning is consistent with the future land use map category of the comprehensive plan. The second is, will the zoning proposal adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby property? Staff believes that the proposed rezoning would not show an adverse effect. However, the private school Wilson Academy is on the adjoining property to the east, and staff believed or thought that it was illegal non-conforming use. The third item is, will the property is the property affected by the rezoning, does it have a reasonable economic use as currently zoned? With the agricultural zoning, you could only build homes or you could have farms. However, and therefore staff believes that in compliance with the future land use map, the industrial zone property, it will allow for the potential owners to engage in the warehouse distribution business, which is permitted and proposed in the M1 zoning district. Therefore, it would have a better economic use than the existing AR zoning district. The fourth item is, will the zoning proposal result in a use which will or could cause excessive or burdensome on impact of existing streets, transportation, facilities, utilities, or schools? If all development regulations are designed and permitted accordingly, the proposed use will not create will not create a burden on the existing street. The proposed warehouse is to allow distribution and does not appear to create an excessive or burdensome use on existing streets, transportation, facilities, utilities, or schools. The fifth item is the zoning proposal in conformity with the future land use map and the policies and intent of the comprehensive land use plan? Staff believes that, yes, it is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan for the future. The sixth and final one is, are other existing or changing conditions affecting the use and development of the property which gives supporting grounds for either approval or disapproval of the zoning proposal? The staff believes that No. However, this area in between the railroad and Interstate I-20, so it'd be a good location for the proposed use. Therefore, staff recommends approval for rezoning from single-family residential to limited industrial. And if there's any questions, we were.
As you noted, we approved this last time.
The planning commission did recommend approval the last time. Yes, sir. The property owner or the property owners, are there any other questions?
I mean, why applicant is Rockdale County? I didn't understand that.
It is Rockdale County because we are taking responsibility for the collateral damage of not advertising properly. And therefore, there were no conditions that were changed or added to. And the design remains the same.
Okay. Do we have anybody? We have the applicant?
The property owner is here. However, if they would like to speak, I think it would be best to open the public hearing.
Okay, we'll open the public hearing now. Do we have the applicant property owner?
And I'll stop sharing. So Jordan Edwards he was there.
Am I here? I can still
Okay,
see
good.
y'all.
Yeah. We can
Well,
hear
I
you.
don't-
Can't see you, we
Okay.
can hear you.
Well, good. Yeah. Mr. Petraea let us know that the notice was not properly done. We only learned of that last month. It came as a surprise to us. We thought the zoning was done. It's an understandable mistake. We know that there's a lot of dates and details to get right with the notice. He has assured us that the process would go the normal way as required by law, that the county was acting as the applicant in this case. We submitted no changes to the original proposal. So the site plan is exactly the same. The Board of Commissioners voted to approve it back in April, I think it was. They did not introduce any additional conditions. They did not ask for any changes to the proposal either. So, this is just kind of redoing the same thing that was done earlier in the spring last year. So we ask that you vote to recommend approval.
Thank you. Any questions?
I just want to make a comment. I like your cowboy hat.
Well, he didn't turn on this video, so we didn't all get to see it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay.
And Mr. Chair, to my knowledge, there were not any opposition, and nobody else in support either as well,
So we close
both
the
here
public
or.
comments. Okay,
Yes, sir. We have no further comments.
okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
And so, can we close the public
Yes,
hearing?
Yes, that's just it.
Thank
Okay. All right. We approved it last time. No issues, but any comments or motions?
Make a motion, we approve. Again.
Second it.
Motion approved, second by Ronnie. Any, discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries unanimously. Okay, if you recall, we're moving items 4 and 5 to the end. So we're going to item 6. And it's a request, a text amendment 2021-03, request to amend section 106-1, 206-1, Watershed Protection District, Section 218-1, Table of Permitted Uses, and Section 218-13, Standards of Use and Development regarding apiaries and beekeeping, which we're going to learn a lot about tonight.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
So, in the, just considering everybody's time, I'm going to keep it short and simple, and try to keep everything concise. So, the county is proposing introducing an apiary ordinance. There recently has been several inquiries that have made us aware that there are no existing ordinances in the book at all regarding beekeeping. Okay, so the ordinance set forth, this is just a quick snapshot of what it is and what it is not. The proposed ordinance proposes to expand beekeeping in the Watershed Protection District, promote good neighbor practices, which the UGA Extension Office publishes and updates regularly, protecting agricultural practices, and creating opportunities for outreach and educational activities. So what it is not is eliminating beekeeping from the county, dictating how beekeepers maintain their hives or property, or degrading our environment. So really this came out of kind of two things. One, we had an inquiry from somebody who was looking into doing beekeeping from a commercial perspective. The other came from folks who were interested in beekeeping, but they lived in denser residential development that we did not really think was necessarily safe to keep bees. And so in an effort to kind of just create some general guidelines so that we, the staff, can refer to in making these decisions, we're putting forth this apiary ordinance. So just going into a little bit of further detail with the ordinance. Oops. So the original ordinance that went to first readings at the Board of Commissions has been updated to reflect concerns from the community. In fact, I was actually fortunate to have a conversation with some community members before this meeting as well to discuss these issues further. So one of the biggest components that was opposed were zoning restrictions. So in this ordinance that is before you today, we have eliminated those zoning restrictions and instead are relying on square footage restrictions. The original ordinance restricted it to AR and R1 residential zones, which close to 90% of Rockdale County residents live in those zones. But it was brought to our attention that there is lots of interest from business owners, schools, and other institutions to have beekeeping on their properties. So we thought it was more suitable and more appropriate to use square footage requirements instead of zoning restrictions. And right now in the ordinance put forward before you today, or tonight, I should say, the minimum square footage requirement is 10,000 square feet. So that's right around 1/4 of an acre. And then from that point, every 5,000 feet additional, you can have 2 more hives. So that is the first thing. The second thing was the flyover barrier requirement. A flyover barrier, for those who don't know, is just a fence that you build around your beehive. This is something that's more common in urban and denser environments where you have neighbors right on top of you. And this is done mainly to, one, protect the hives from people who don't need to be in the hives, and then two, to promote and kind of train bees to fly higher, quicker as they leave and approach the hive. However, because of the humid environment and the seasonal changes in Georgia, the flyover barrier does pose a risk to damaging hives, just because it'll increase the amount of shade on hives, which poses a threat. Additionally, Rockdale County, most lots in Rockdale County have enough land on their property to really forego that requirement. And then the last thing is removing certain landscaping requirements. In the original ordinance, we had a requirement for both plants that are native in Georgia and our pollinator plants. We have removed those just because that was something that was opposed, and we want to be good stewards and good public servants. Okay? Now, switching gears a little bit, there were some supported components that had been further enhanced. So one of the things that folks were really excited about were the fact that we are expanding this to the watershed protection district. Beekeeping in apiaries pose no threat to water quality. And we thought this would be a great activity that could be introduced in a more rural area of the county. Secondly, again, as I mentioned before, staff has not only maintained the square footage requirements, but we have lowered them by 5,000 feet. And then lastly, we are maintaining the one landscaping requirement, which is to have a nearby water source. And this can be anything from a fountain to an existing stream to an existing pond. There is an issue, especially in more suburban areas where bees can wander into pools and drown. We get complaints from both pool owners, and there are issues that the beekeepers themselves face whenever this happens. And of course, bees are wild animals and they will do what they want to do. But this requirement at least assures that there's an appropriate water source nearby. And so those are kind of the components that we have adjusted here. And then lastly is the table of permitted uses. This just highlights exactly what zones we have permitted this in. And as you can see, in the watershed, we have permitted this in, proposing to permit this in the WNR, which is essentially the entire watershed protection district. The last four zoning designations you see on that graph really designate the pond, the beach around the reservoir, and then the area immediately around the beach. Those are areas that we just don't allow any sort of activity in. And then on the second table, that shows you all of the zones outside of the watershed protection district. We have added conditional permitting to our zones that require HOAs. Just because we would like to, again, be good public servants and good stewards and work with HOAs in that matter. We've also proposed conditional approval in our multifamily residential zones as well. Again, just because, one, there's not necessarily enough space for individual residents to have beehives. However, we would not be opposed if a property owner wants to do a community garden on the complex, and that's a component of that. Additionally, we have added our commercial and industrial zones as well. And so that kind of summarizes that. And I believe next we'll go into the public hearing part of this.
Before we move forward, I have a question. When we say water fountain, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I am imagining something like a bird bath.
Bird bath.
Yeah, just very simple. We're just really kind of doing that to assure that there is at least a nearby water source. And like I mentioned earlier, bees are going to do whatever they want, but they typically are, well, they're actually very habitual creatures. So if they find one place, they kind of stick to it. And that was the goal with that.
And when we say that we are allowing in 10,000 square feet, each hive, right? So, which is quarter of an acre. So if somebody have an acre, so now he can have, every 5,000 feet more. So,
yes.
like 10 hives.
Yes. I don't know if that math is absolutely exact on that, but
if we
yes.
do the math that way,
yes.
Because every 5,000 you are adding another, so.
Yep. So it's 10,000 minimum, which is a quarter of an acre. And then for every 5,000 additional, you get 2 more hives.
For every 5,000.
Yes, sir.
So then what makes it commercial? How will we call this is, my hobby or this is commercial? If somebody have 5 acres and he can get, say, 30 hives, I'm just throwing a number. So will it be considered commercial or will it be considered?
No, so that does not really have anything to do with the number of hives, but them just operating a business and extracting the honey. So if you can do that and operate a successful business with 5 hives, then so be it. If you need X amount more than that, you'll still have to have those square footage.
But my question is the law same for commercial beehive?
Yes, yes. So we're not making a distinction between that. We're just saying that we're trying to build a foundation for those who might be interested in that.
Did you learn more about bees than you thought you'd ever know?
Yes, believe it or not, I've had to lean on the UGA Extension Office, a couple of friends from college who have degrees in wildlife management, and then of course a few members from our community as well. The original ordinance was something that was similar to ordinances they have out west. And so of course we need to adapt this to Rockdale County, just because this is something that's not really super common in Georgia, but as it becomes more popular, we have to address the need and the desire.
Considering the decline of the honeybee, I think it's very important that we make every effort to support this activity.
Exactly. And the hope is with this ordinance that we are kind of putting something in stone that preserves this as the county develops, because as we've seen in the previous parts of this hearing, the county will grow and develop, and so this is a piece that we need to preserve.
I think it's important. How aggressive are honeybees? I don't think they're very aggressive.
No, honeybees are not aggressive at all. This was a question that was posed in another county not too long ago. Honeybees are not known to be aggressive at all. Yes.
It's important. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there, we can open up to public hearing. Is there anybody signed up?
Yes. So we had a few people signed up. I believe that our first 2 folks have left already. So if Mr. Shipp wants to come up.
I knew David would be there.
Hey, Tom. David Shipp, Rockdale County resident, and I probably own the largest number of beehives in Rockdale County. I have about 60 hives. To be considered a commercial beekeeper, Ahmad, you really need to have at least 200 hives. Up to that, you're just a sideliner, just a hobby. Some of the beekeepers in Georgia, one of the largest beekeepers are down in Jessup County, and they have over 15,000 hives. Beekeeping in the state of Georgia alone contributes $360 million into the economic community of Georgia. With all that, I'd like to express my thanks to Tanner and to Teresa Jacobs and to Mr. Johnson for all their work and listening to some of us beekeepers and the community in changing the ordinance to make it more workable. We want to always be good neighbors. We want to try to make sure that our bees don't get where they don't belong. They are wild creatures. They are not tame. But at the same time, it helps to have beekeepers in an area because they're able to keep down any threat of Africanized bees, which are aggressive. And by having the European honeybees that are maintained, then we're able to keep calm bees because we don't want to work with mean bees either. And so we appreciate the county working with us and us working together in a collaborative effort to make sure that this is a workable ordinance so that we can be good neighbors as beekeepers, and that we can be good environmentalists to help the environment keep all your gardens pollinated, your fruit trees pollinated, and to provide honey for those of us who suffer allergies. And so I appreciate it, and I do support this ordinance as currently changed and written, and I appreciate what you do. And I didn't know I would be so entertained. We need to have this as a Clash of the Titans earlier. It would need to be a show on TV. It would have been good. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David.
All right, it looks like next we have a Mr. Robert, if you would like to come on up.
I really don't have anything to say now after the changes have been made. I've been a beekeeper. I'm not currently a beekeeper, but I've been a beekeeper since 1970. And we need them. So the changes are okay with me.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
All right, I just want to make sure, Mr. Larry. Okay. And then Mr. George.
Somebody talking in the back.
Somebody got a radio on?
Tom, what are you listening to?
Somebody's got their TV
Radio
on.
It sounds like Tom.
Okay.
I think our future president's having a conversation on TV.
Good evening again, George Kelichek. I'm the taxpayer and a board member of the Rockdale Soil Water Conservation District. Just like to point out a few things regarding some bee education. Where trees and woods are essential to filter our air, bees are vital to both pollinate the food we need to survive and pollinate many of the trees and flowers that provide habitats to our wildlife and control our rivers and streams and stormwater runoff. According to the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, approximately 80% of all flowering plants specialize for pollination by animals, mostly insect, which includes bees. Pollination is crucial because many of our fruits, vegetables, and crops that feed our livestock rely on it to be fertilized. So without it, we would go hungry. Vegetables such as broccoli, asparagus, cucumber rely on pollination of bees, as do apricots, strawberries, apples, tomatoes, and almonds. USDA estimates that honeybees do $11 to $15 billion in work to American farmers every year. That's a cost that would be absorbed by American shoppers if we didn't have bees. And that would have a real socio-economic disadvantage to all Americans and folks around the world. Could you imagine having to pay $16 for an apple? That's what their research showed. As honeybees gather pollen and nectar for their survival, they pollinate crops such as apples, cranberries, melons, and broccoli. One crop, my favorite in M&Ms, are almonds. Guess what? 100% of all almonds are pollinated by bees. Sure, I'm glad we have bees because I like M&Ms with almonds in them.
I'd like to have the M&Ms.
You have any?
As you can see, I ate a bunch coming over here. There's very few left. But just hundreds and hundreds of crops are pollinated by bees, honeybees, okra, potatoes, onions, cashews, celery, mustard, broccoli. And I could go on and on. Cauliflower, cabbage, our favorite Brussels sprouts as kids. Watermelon, tangerines, oranges, have them every morning. Cucumber, squash, pumpkin, lime, carrots, lemons, strawberries, cotton. Just imagine if we didn't have bees, we wouldn't have cotton in our world. Apples for the state of Georgia, in North Georgia. And finally, peaches. If we didn't have bees, we wouldn't be the peach state. So those are my comments. Thank you very much for the changes in the ordinances, and we really do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have it. Anybody else signed up?
Yes, we do have one person online.
Okay.
Ms. Catherine?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. My name is Catherine Lynn. I grew up in Rockdale County. I live in Millstead. I've been a beekeeper for 11 years, and currently I have hives in 2 locations in the county. I'm also a former officer of the East Metro Beekeepers Association, which is a club that was started by the previous speaker, David Shipp, and we have a substantial membership within Rockdale County. There are quite a few beekeepers. You might be surprised. I had intended to comment in opposition to the ordinance that was presented to the Board of Commissioners in December. And subsequently, it was unanimously approved and sent to you. However, as the planner mentioned, the draft ordinance attached to your agenda is dramatically different than the one that was attached to the resolution and presented to the Board of Commissioners. It does appear that the planning department has amended the proposed ordinance to remove many of the unreasonable restrictions and requirements that existed in the prior version, and is now presenting a new and much more reasonable version of the ordinance for your consideration. I'm very glad to see that these changes have taken place. So a lot of what I was going to say doesn't matter now, which is a good thing. But that said, I do still feel that the limitations on the number of nucleus hives and the time periods in which they are permitted are unnecessary, and it is not clear why these limitations remain in the ordinance. The honeybees need all the help they can get, and any ordinance that seeks to limit a beekeeper's efforts to increase the honeybee population is not only bad for the bees, it's bad for the planet. Another thing I will point out to you is that the official code of Georgia, Title 2, Chapter 3, is on honeybees, and it prohibits the county from adopting any ordinance, rule, or regulation or resolution prohibiting, impeding, or restricting the establishment or maintenance of honeybees in hives, and limiting the number of nucleus hives or restricting the time frame in which they are allowed does exactly that. So this exception should also be removed from the final ordinance. Aside from that, I'm just a little concerned at this point about proper procedure. And so I would like some clarification on that. It has always been my understanding that once a resolution enters the voting process, it cannot be amended midstream. So I would just like some assurances that when you vote, it is crystal clear which version of this ordinance you are voting on. Given that both versions of the ordinance have the same title and date, there is nothing that indicates that the ordinance attached to your agenda has been dramatically modified since it left the Board of Commissioners. So I would appreciate it if you would clarify that tonight prior to the vote. Thank you. That is all I have.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. And we have it. Well, we're out of time for the public comments, so we'll close the public portion of the meeting and let you do your thing.
All right. So do you guys have any questions first?
So we are voting on the latest, there was a question, the latest amendment, text amendment. Okay.
So to address the questions, one, pull it up here. All right. All right, here we go. So to address I think what the central concern is with the nucleus colonies, typically during the early spring, beekeepers will introduce nucleus colonies, usually because their hives have grown and done well from the previous summer. And so what happens is when a beehive gets to a certain size, it's really a good idea to split that hive and allow it to generate a new hive. So without this clause, they would be kind of stuck with the year-round provisions of X number of hives. So we can work with the community and with subject matter experts to increase the number of nucleus hives allowed. But the current number is based off of just general research that's already been conducted by the University of Georgia. And so the other thing I want to add too is that we've also added that a beekeeper can maintain a nucleus hive outside of that springtime during the winter. And that's to protect against winter losses. So if that's something we need to adjust, I'll be more than happy to have those discussions. Again, this is just to allow both of these clauses are to allow some breathing room for the beekeeper during the winter and the spring to make any adjustments to the hives that need to be made based on how they view the health of the hives.
She actually quoted a law. So I don't know if it was statutory or if it was something, but you don't want to find yourself like having to go backwards and rewrite something based on, if you're going against, something that's actually case law.
Yes, so the state of Georgia really does not allow counties to manipulate or really regulate most agricultural practices. And so beekeeping is a part of those agricultural practices. Right. This really is more in reference to the number of hives per square footage. So I can definitely understand how that is viewed as getting involved with how beekeepers maintain their hives, for sure, because this is on the subject of maintaining a hive. But again, it's really to allow breathing room for folks who are at certain square footages to allow them extra hives during the winter and spring. But I 100% understand your concern there.
Okay.
But isn't it in fact, make it an ordinance that the state of Georgia says we're not supposed to do?
So again, that depends on the interpretation. And so the way that I've written this and the intent of this is to allow breathing room with these zoning restrictions. And so counties do have the authority to apply zoning restrictions. And of course, we can always take off X number of nucleus colonies, but we would still like to add the provision that beekeepers can have nucleus colonies during the winter and spring.
We discussed earlier getting into legal things versus voting on these things. The ordinances are reviewed and approved by the county attorney. So
absolutely,
that would be for him to
right. I wanted that to be out there, is what I'm saying.
Right, okay.
I wanted it to be stated.
Yes, no, that is totally understandable. I don't think anybody wants to.
Stated. Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So any more discussion? Motions?
Motion to approve.
I second it.
Motion approved. Karen?
Applicant also wanted
Vanessa,
clarity.
second by Karen. Any discussion?
I said yes. I think the applicant also wanted clarity to make sure we were voting on this one and not on the other one, being that they were very similar.
Yes, so we
Motion to approve the good one.
I like that.
The latest one, okay. All right. Yes, it is. We are voting on the latest one. So, all right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. All right, item R7, text amendment, case 2021-04, request to amend section 206-1 watershed protection district regarding organic farming, applicant county staff.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started with this one as well. Okay. So we are proposing adding organic farming to our Unified Development Ordinance. And this again is just to keep Rockdale up with the times and to address a desire from the community to engage in organic farming. So similar to the apiary ordinance, I want to go ahead and kind of clarify in a concise way what this ordinance is and what it is not. We are proposing to expand organic farming into the watershed protection district. Currently, this agricultural practice is not permitted in the district. Secondly, we as a county would like to codify upholding USDA organic standards as well, just to ensure that our organic farmers are growing things organically. Third, we are doing this also in an effort to preserve our county's environment. Organic farming actually helps the environment and adds good things to the environment. And then lastly, we want to be able to really provide better food security for residents and outreach opportunities for the community. I think everybody can agree that Americans might eat a little bit too much junk food. And that kind of boils down to an access issue. So by introducing organic farming and how this ordinance is read today, we are allowing this in the watershed protection district, and we are allowing the opportunity for outreach and educational activities as well. What is not proposed is reintroducing traditional agricultural practices or introducing heavy commercial activity to the WP district. And we are not regulating private gardens as well. That was a concern that came up. So the basic components of this ordinance, and I apologize, I didn't update the title here. But the basic components again is just expanding organic farming. So we have proposed to expand in the watershed protection district. And we have also proposed following USDA definitions and requirements for operation. So if you look in the definition for organic farming, we have included language that supports following USDA organic requirements. We have also proposed to allow farming equipment to operate in the WP district, just because of the nature of the WP district not allowing any agricultural practices. Farming equipment is a part of that category. So in an effort to be sensible about farming, a part of this includes allowing that equipment. But we have included requirements for setbacks as to not impact any residential neighbors. And then we also are using this to clarify primary uses. This ordinance before you tonight proposes the primary use of organic farming to be just that, organic farming, but does include agritourism as a secondary use. And this is really just to ensure that there are opportunities for community outreach and educational activities. We have somebody speaking later today that will probably go into more detail. They have creating partnerships with the county to have these outreach opportunities, which is pretty exciting. And then lastly, we just have the permitted uses table. Pretty simple. We are proposing it to be permitted in the watershed protection district.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
We will now open up to the public meeting, public hearing.
So I believe we do have one person online, Miss Robin.
Yes. Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. My name is Robin Shannon. I live at 500 South Columbia Drive, Decatur, Georgia, speaking in favor of the organic farming ordinance this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd also like to thank Tanner Barr and the rest of the planning department staff for their attention and responsiveness to this ordinance drafting. I am the co-founder and executive director of a Georgia-based nonprofit organization called Global Growers Network. We partner with people from diverse cultures to grow fresh food for their families and for local marketplaces. And in doing so, we promote organic farming practices for local food production with support from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I'm interested in this issue because my organization, Global Growers Network, is considering an expansion of our programs and our land network into Rockdale County. I'm also interested because I have a background in organic agriculture, specifically organic crop production, which is what we're talking about today. So I do want to clarify that this is not talking about livestock or bees at this point. And I'm here to speak in favor of the ordinance and to add it to the Watershed Protection District. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have around organic agriculture, organic farming, to the extent that that's helpful today. And one key thing I do want to highlight that's included in the draft, and Tanner indicated this, is that organic farming is already defined and highly regulated by the USDA, by federal standards. And so it's very clearly spelled out guidance for what is and isn't permitted. And I know that the planning staff took great care to be sure that that was all consistently written. And then I have done a good bit to familiarize myself with the history, the purpose, and conditions in the Watershed Protection District. And want to say that I'm really impressed by the county's commitment to protecting its watershed. I believe that organic farming will not only present new opportunities for community engagement and economic development in Rockdale County, but I believe it's consistent with the approach to the Watershed Protection District. And I say this because one of the central tenets of organic farming is that organic farming will improve water quality. That is a part of the USDA description of organic farming. So we are not only talking about not having a harmful impact on the watershed, but also I'm suggesting that this will actually benefit the environment of the Watershed Protection District. So again, I appreciate the diligent work of the planning staff to look into this issue. I hope it receives support from the Planning Commission. And please let me know if you have any questions for me, for my organization, or around the topic of organic farming. I'd be happy to stick around and talk to you at this meeting or at any point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. No. Okay. Well, thank you. All right. Is there anybody else? Okay. So we'll close the public portion of the meeting.
All right. So now that the public portion of the meeting is closed, is there any remaining questions?
You have a sample?
No.
Okay. All right.
Oh, good sign.
Great job.
All right. Any questions? Okay. All right. Motions?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Moved by Karen, second by Rodney. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? Good. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Item R8 is abandonment and decommission of a right-of-way. Request to abandon and decommission a portion of Dogwood Industrial Circle. Applicant David Miles, attorney James C. Overstreet Jr.
That's not Mike.
Hello and welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, fellow Planning Commission members. I want to speak briefly tonight on the item R8, the abandonment and decommission right away for a portion of Dogwood Industrial Circle. This is an area that some of you may be familiar with, an area that has been depicted by neglect and blight. And this is an area that the petitioner, Mr. Miles, is looking to come into and to engage a project to help clean up the particular area. And this will be part of a much larger land development project. First thing is the actual decommissioning of the roadway. And we've met with our RDOT, Rockdale DOT department. When you talk about decommissioning and abandoning a roadway, there's accessibility issues and maintenance issues. Well, the petitioner, Mr. Miles, has agreed to take care of the maintenance and the other responsibilities, potholes and so forth, which relinquishes that duty from the county. If there are any questions, I'd like to ask him to come up. Let's see, do you have anything? To show? I think we have a map to show, let's see. All right, so here's a site map of the area. Again, this is Dogwood Industrial that actually makes a semicircle from Dogwood Drive. This is an area that, again, has been neglected, and some of the folks in the county were not aware that this was actually in the unincorporated portion of Rockdale. Show the next slide, please. I want to show you where the next one. Well, here is a letter from the attorney for Mr. Miles. This is explaining his intent. Again, the abandonment is the first phase in a much larger proposal to establish a storage facility. And again, and that will be later on, the land development will be later on. Tonight, the purpose is just to make a decision on a recommendation on the actual road abandonment portion. All right, this next, thank you, Tears. This next display here shows two cul-de-sacs, one on each side, where with the portion, the actual potential short abandonment. But what's going to happen actually, after talking to, again, our DOT for the county, as well as Mr. Miles, looking at doing the entire, abandoning the entire portion of it. And so we talked to his attorney, we talked to his, the engineer. Again, our engineers have looked at it. We have some concerns, but after Mr. Miles agreed to be responsible for the actual maintenance of it, making sure there's still accessibility to the other properties, particularly on the right side of the map. We as staff approve this abandonment. So even though it says a portion of the circle, it will end up being decommissioning and abandonment of the entire area. And if you have any more, I guess, some technical questions, Mr. Miles, I think is here. So are there any questions?
So this gives him ownership of the property?
Well, he owns a property now. Basically, the Dogwood Industrial currently is a public right-of-way, a public roadway.
You're making it private.
It will be private, right? And he will, again, he's agreed to be responsible for the maintenance of a private, which again, talking to our RDOT, our DOT, and other county engineers relinquishes that responsibility from the county to Mr. Miles.
Okay.
So all the 5 parcels are owned by him. It's
But-
like 5 parcels over there, which are on that Dogwood Drive.
He owns the majority of them. There are 3 on the right side that are not owned by Mr. Miles, but he has spoken with those individuals, and they are okay with him actually coming in and as long as he's going to provide access to those individuals.
Okay.
So if you guys have any questions, any specific detailed questions, Mr. Miles is here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Miles? Okay.
I'm David Miles. If anybody's got any questions, I'm pretty sure I can give you some answers, but I know y'all don't want to be here any more than I do. So I'm ready to answer those questions. Let's go.
How are you doing?
Pardon?
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm a little bit hard of hearing, so.
Okay.
My only concern was that, if it's other parcels involved in that, what is the legal way, how they will, or the county has already talked to them, so they have
All of
given
the-
some kind of a legal.
All the property owners have already signed notes about their property agreeing with the development that I'm doing. All the property owners are aware of the deterioration of that roadway going back behind K&D Shoes and that area in there. And all of them have signed pieces of paper saying that they're in 100% agreement with it. And when I mentioned to them, excuse me, when I mentioned to them the fact that the county was more in favor of me taking out the whole roadway and being responsible for that, I asked them, would you rather me cut the grass on the edge of the road or worry about the county doing it? And of course, they said they'd rather me do it.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is the maintenance of this area would be not that much trouble for me. I keep a maintenance crew on all my properties and make sure that I maintain them and keep them up to par. And most of the properties that I have bought throughout my whole life have been pieces of property that in some way someone has not maintained it, whether it be private property or in this situation, a county roadway that's just been neglected because it has no use really, except for the trash and debris that's dropped off there on a regular basis and the somewhat illegal activity that goes on there in the evenings. And in the process of reviewing this with all the property owners, I didn't have any problem with them agreeing for me to develop that area in there and turn it into something similar to what I've done in Conyers.
Can we put that survey back up real quick?
Pardon?
Can we see that survey real quick again?
The survey.
So what you're saying is that the county's gonna abandon that property, correct? Good. And the other property owners have access regardless of that property, of that.
The drawing that we've worked out is one side will have a short driveway that will have access to the business on the right-hand side going in and my new business on the left-hand side. It has one other business that requested a back driveway coming into K&D Shoes for them to be able to have access to get the trucks out.
Okay, so you have mutual agreement. Everybody has a mutual agreement.
We've got all the agreements. I've had them signed again just the other day with this new change.
Okay.
And everybody's in agreement. So with the exception of me having to do a whole lot of work, it's ready to go. Okay.
All right. Any other question? All right, thank you.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You're good, thank you. Okay. All right, we close the public portion of the hearing, and the county is obviously recommending approval of that since you brought it here.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any more questions? Okay. All right. We're now in discussion and our motions.
I make a motion to approve.
Second it.
Motion by Karen to approve, second by Ronnie. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're not done. We got to back up. Okay. Okay. All right, couple we skipped. Okay. We're going to item R4, text amendment, case 2021-01, a request to amend section 234-7 reconstruction regarding detached single-family residential non-conforming uses. Applicant county staff.
Good evening, again, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, Terry Petrie, zoning administrator. So what we are proposing is to make the existing paragraph a subsection A and add subsection B, which states, provided however a building which housed or houses a detached or attached single-family residential non-conforming use may be reoccupied by the same use after it has been damaged to the extent of 60% or more of the total fair market value of the building only as a matter of right in all zoning districts. So basically, this came about because of a residence in an area of Rockdale County that is adjacent to the city of Conyers. This is on Old Covington Road near 138. And the property owner had no plans on converting the single family residence into a commercial industrial zoning or use for that matter. However, they wanted to sell the property and the buyer wanted to buy the property, but they had issues with either mortgage or, well, they had issues from finance company, let's say, because of the requirement go to the board adjustments if it was damaged by more than 60%. And having been with Savannah when similar circumstances occurred and the city, so using my experience with the city of Savannah led me to believe, okay, let's go ahead and do the same thing and allow people the choice to rebuild their residence, even if it is non-conforming. With this specific location, ideally, if the Board of Commissioners agree, we may decide to rezone it to something else similar to the adjacent city of Conyers zoning. However, that with Tanner, with Mr. Barr here, we could actually do a little bit more thinking about it down the road. But I want to get this done now, and this seemed to be a good array to a happy medium. And if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you. Anybody signed up?
No, sir. Nobody signed up for the public hearing, which I believe was open and.
Right. Well, public hearing's open, now closed.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. We're in discussion and our motion.
I think it's simple that. Yeah. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
By Ronnie. Ronnie beat you.
Okay.
It's that Facebook delay that got you. Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed, motion carries. Okay. And the last one, item R5, text amendment case number 2021-02, request to amend section 238-7, Board of Adjustment regarding meetings of the Board of Adjustment. County staff.
Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, Terrence Petrie, Zoning Administrator. This is to remove a specific day of the week that is mentioned in the UDO, which is Monday, the first Monday of the month. And also, to make it read the same as the Planning Commission, which is regularly scheduled meetings each month. There is not a specific day for the Planning Commission, and so we're proposing the same thing, along with the same format as the Planning Commission section at this time. The first Mondays in the month seem to be a little tough on staff and even the planning commissions and other interested parties. And so we're proposing to move from Monday to a different date, but not have a specific date in the code. And if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Yep. Questions? We have anybody signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, that's public hearing is open and public hearing is closed.
I make a motion to approve.
A motion to approve by
Second it.
Karen, second by Ronnie. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Okay. All right. And so we have two reports.
They're still here.
All right. Oh, you're still here?
Marvin and I were just commenting, it's been a long time since we've had a planning commission or been to a planning commission that lasted this long. So a lot of good work took place tonight.
Yes.
The two cases that you heard last month, the two special use permit cases, one at 1175 Green Street for the personal care home and the other at 2189 Village Court for the home occupation for lawn care, were both approved by the mayor and council.
Okay, thank you.
The city does have one item of business that will be heard next month that we're working on that staff report, and we'll get those out to you when they are completed.
Is that a rezoning or?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
And that's all I'm going to say about it. Thank you.
Yes.
Come on.
Okay, thank you.
Want to chat about it?
Okay. Rockdale County.
And I think looks like I'll be doing the honors of introducing, well, thought it was on here. So this is the February.
It's on here.
Would pleased to announce or introduce Mr. Kalanos V. Johnson as the Director of Planning and Development, and I will turn it over to him.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome.
Good evening again, I guess officially now. Thank you. Kalanos Johnson, this is my beginning of my third week. It's nice to meet you all. I've heard a lot of good things about you. As I mentioned today, I chaired some of your other fellow members. Glad to be here. Staff has been wonderful, as you see tonight, and some of the unique topics dealing with, apiary bees and organic farming, and they've coordinated with the public to, put together some good material, good information that'll help make the county a little more efficient and all. And so, Ms. Jacobs, Ms. Harris, Tanner, Terrace, the entire staff has been nothing but great. Chief Cabe and some of the other, my peer directors have all kind of welcomed me in. Mr. Kimball over there with the PR team and all. So just glad to be here. I've got approximately, 24, 25 years of experience. Most of it has been in the private industry consulting, but my last 2 or 3 years I've been in the public sector. So background, master's in planning, development, of strong interest in economic development. I was a former vice chairman for the Clayton County Development Authority. I've done a lot of construction management, obviously a lot of planning. And so I'm just glad to be here. Met with the chair and a few other people and still have to make my rounds, but a lot of good opportunity here in the county. I just want to come here and be a team member and just to, contribute, be an asset. So please feel free to give me a call and, just look forward to having a very rewarding experience. Again, I want to give kudos to the staff for what they've done and holding the fort down until I've gotten here. And, I'm glad to be here. So any questions, thoughts for me, from you all?
I just want to welcome you, and I know I heard good things about you from the staff, and they were so excited about your coming, and I, for one, am glad you're here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Welcome.
Appreciate it.
So, all right. Any questions?
Second that.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And the next scheduled meeting is February 11th, 7 p.m. Does the county have any business next February? Hopefully not too much.
Yes, sir. We do have definitely 2 projects, 2 rezoning projects. And additionally, we will try to do a text amendment as well. However, that is yet to be finalized.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Public comments?
I'd like to know, do we have the power to make any recommendations about berms?
Yeah.
Just one.
No.
We don't?
Okay. Oh, you mean as a condition?
As a condition,
Yeah, we can recommend,
can we make any recommendations?
they don't have to follow it, but
Okay,
we make,
just wondering.
we make conditions, recommendation for conditions on
All right,
other things. Yeah.
okay.
Sure. Okay.
Just want to be clear about that.
I'm messing with
You're referring to anything particular?
Can you hear the sarcasm in my voice?
Okay. All right. At this point, there being no public comments.
Mr. Chair, yes.
Sorry, one other item that Ms. Jacobs just alerted to my attention. The Board of Commissioners leadership has announced last week that from here on out, because of the spike in rates for COVID-19, that we will start doing totally virtual meetings. So Board of Commissioners meeting, Board of Adjustments, as well as Planning Commission meetings. So next month's meeting will be total virtual.
Okay.
With the exception of residents or individuals who don't have access to computers and or telephones, can make special requests, letting us know. We will make, if not this room, somewhere available for them. We have to make those accommodations by state law. But just so you all know that from here on out, most of the meetings will be virtual now, again, according
Totally
to
understandable.
spikes.
All right.
Yeah.
Understandable.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome to my club.
Okay, glad.
Tom's going to have to teach us about those
Very long.
cool backgrounds he has, right?
And the only other thing that I wanted to mention too, because we've got used to this setup now, and now we're going to be changing, and you're going to be going from home or your workplace or however you're going to come into the meetings through Zoom. So we'll do some testing with you and make sure your equipment works okay. And if we need to come out and help out with that, we'll do that prior to our February meeting. So any testing that we need to do, we'll do that prior to those meetings starting, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that being said, motion to adjourn.
I make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You better not. Okay. Thank you all for coming.
Good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are.
Bye.